Chapter 928. Just as Xia Shangzhou had expected, Lin Jiayi had already woken up. She was seated at her desk with a deep frown on her face. Back when he first started his internship with Lin Jiayi, he was really afraid of her. Every time he saw her, he would want to run away. But now, Xia Shangzhou was able to calmly place a cup of coffee in front of Lin Jiayi and say, "Boss Lin, there's a video conference in 20 minutes. You can go and touch up your makeup now. I've already prepared the documents for the conference and they're all here." Lin Jiayi picked up the cup of coffee and took a sip. It was her favorite flavor. She flipped open the documents that Xia Shangzhou had prepared, and it was clear and concise. It was her favorite style. The fury in her eyes dissipated in an instant. "Aren't you on your annual leave?" My younger sister just got married and my parents kept urging me to get married. I couldn't take it anymore, so I came back to work." Xia Shangzhou hid the fact that he was planning to go on a vacation, but before he could do so, he was called back to Beijing. Lin Jiayi replied with an "oh" as she drank another half a cup of coffee before heading to the bathroom to touch up her makeup. Xia Shangzhou backed out of Lin Jiayi's office to deal with the client meeting after the video conference. At 3:30 p.m. Lin Jiayi's conference was over, and she had to meet the client. Xia Shangzhou had already prepared a car in advance, and he even left a pair of flats in the car so that Lin Jiayi could return to the car after meeting the client. It would make her feet more comfortable in high heels. Since Xia Shangzhou had returned, it went without saying that he would be accompanying Lin Jiayi to meet with the client. Before leaving the office, Xia Shangzhou took a look at the temperature of the night and noted that it was a little cold. So he headed over to Lin Jiayi's closet and took out a down jacket and a blanket, as well as a few heaters and water bottles. After which, Xia Shangzhou returned to his desk. While he was grabbing his phone and wallet, he didn't forget to open the drawer and grab a box of stomach medicine and hangover medicine. Lin Jiayi was afraid of the cold, but she wanted to maintain her poise instead of warmth. She would often suffer from excruciating pain during those few days of the month, but she didn't learn from it. Her stomach wasn't very good and she always liked to eat spicy food. Sometimes she would suddenly have a stomachache and then the stomach medicine would become a regular item in his desk drawer. As for the hangover medicine, as long as Lin Jiayi was with him, he wouldn't allow her to drink alcohol. Even if she was forced to drink at a social event, the culprit would be him. As such, he usually prepared the hangover medicine for himself. However, today was different. It was the anniversary of Enchanting's death, so there was no doubt that Lin Jiayi would be drinking. Thus, he prepared some hangover medicine in advance so that she wouldn't suffer from a terrible hangover the next day. Xia Shangzhou had prepared everything he needed, so no matter how hot-tempered Lin Jiayi was, she still managed to tame herself. It was almost 7 o'clock in the evening by the time he finished meeting the clients. Lin Jiayi didn't have any social engagements today, or to be more precise, she wouldn't have any social engagements on this day every year. Xia Shangzhou knew that Lin Jiayi would go for a drink after parting ways with him, so he took the initiative to suggest, "Boss Lin, since you don't have much on today, why don't you head to W's? It's a new bar opened by Liang Jusi and I heard that it's quite a good bar." With everything under Xia Shangzhou's control, Lin Jiayi nodded her head and said, "All right." It was still early, so there weren't many people at W's. Liang Jusi wasn't around either, but the waiter recognized Xia Shangzhou and Lin Jiayi, so he arranged the best and most secluded seats for them. Chapter 929. The two of them sat quietly on their respective seats drinking their wine. After a long time, Lin Jiayi suddenly raised her head and asked Xia Shangzhou, "Navigator, how old are you?" "I'm a year older than boss." "That means you're 2 years younger than me?" Lin Jiayi's lips curled up into a light smile, but her eyes shone brilliantly. "Wimpy brat." "Wimpy brat? That's even worse than navigator. Hey little brother, have you ever liked someone before?" Xia Shangzhou. "Little brother? That's even worse than wimpy brat." Xia Shangzhou fell silent for a moment before shaking his head. Oh. He used to think that little junior sister was his goddess, but that kind of feeling, let alone liking her, he couldn't even say that his heart was moved. Hearing Xia Shangzhou's reply, Lin Jiayi gulped down a huge cup of wine in disappointment. "I thought that you already have someone you like. At least I'll be able to listen to your story." As she spoke, Lin Jiayi glanced at her wine glass and stroked it lightly with her fingertips. "I once liked someone and I liked him very, very much. I liked him so much that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. Xia Shangzhou knew that Lin Jiayi was talking about Qing Ting, but he feigned ignorance and asked, "What happened after that?" After that? After that, he died. He died in a car accident 8 years ago. It was a car that fell off a cliff and not even his bones were left behind. So that's how he died. Xia Shangzhou squeezed the wine cup in his hand. Boss Lin, my condolences. If he were still alive, he would surely wish for you to be happy. I was very happy. I thought that earning money would make me happy, so I've been earning money like a madman all these years. I thought that buying and buying would make me happy, so I've been working hard to buy and buy all these years. I'll only allow myself to be sad for one day, and that day is today. Of the 4 of them in room 501, Xia Shangzhou knew that he was the most clumsy one. He had no idea how he should console Lin Jiayi, so he pondered for a moment before saying, "Boss Lin, you'll meet better people in the future. I meet good people every day. You see, there are so many people chasing after me. It's not like you don't know that they are all good people, but, do you know? Navigator, after he left, I never thought about getting married. I just wanted to spend the rest of my life alone." When Xia Shangzhou heard this, he smiled. "Boss Lin, you won't be alone for the rest of your life. I'll be with you." Lin Jiayi thought that Xia Shangzhou was joking with her, so she chuckled softly. A moment later she said, "Navigator, even though those are just words of consolation, I still have to thank you for it." As she spoke, Lin Jiayi stared at the GPS and continued, "I think that what your parents said is right. You're not young anymore, so it's about time for you to find a good girl, get into a good relationship and live a good life." Xia Shangzhou said nothing and only smiled. Lin Jiayi poured herself another cup of wine and said, "Navigator, I'll keep an eye out for you. I'll introduce you to some good girls when I meet them." Xia Shangzhou did not refuse. "Thank you," he said. Lin Jiayi didn't say a word. Instead, she continued to pour cup after cup of wine down her throat. Xia Shangzhou didn't say anything else either. He knew that she would get drunk, so he tried his best to restrain himself. He wasn't looking at her. His eyes were fixed on the window, but her silhouette was reflected in the window. Chapter 930. Gazing at her silhouette, he muttered in his heart, "No, I don't have a girl I like. I have someone I love. But the person I love, I'm not worthy of her. So I'll accompany her forever. If she wants to die alone, I'll accompany her until the end of her life." Before 10 o'clock, Lin Jiayi was already dead drunk. Xia Shangzhou sent her home, and just like usual, he cleaned up the messy house before heading to the kitchen to cook a pot of porridge to keep it warm. After which, he sent a message to Lin Jiayi reminding her to drink it the next morning before hailing a cab back to his rented apartment. It was already 3 in the morning. Xia Shangzhou took a shower and laid on his bed. Just as he was about to sleep, his phone suddenly lit up. Picking it up, he saw that it was a message. "Mr. Xia, I am really sincere in inviting you to jump ship to my company. If you are not satisfied with the annual salary I gave you last time of 10 million, then I can double it and give you the company's shares. I can also give you the right to speak in the company." Without any hesitation, Xia Shangzhou rejected the offer. "There's no need for that. Thank you for your kindness. Mr. Xia, based on what I know, the salary that Boss Lin offers you is only average. Given your capabilities, it's a little overkill for you to stay by her side as her assistant. You've been by her side for so many years, but you can't even afford a house in Beijing. The salary I'm offering you is really acceptable. Why don't you state your conditions and I'll consider it?" "I don't have any conditions. I won't jump ship." After replying, Xia Shangzhou blocked the other party's message and put down his phone. Lying on the single bed in his rented apartment, he closed his eyes and fell asleep. After her final examinations, Shi Yao began looking for an internship. Ever since she was young, her dream was to become a teacher. Thus, the positions she applied for were all teachers. Finally, Shi Yao's internship was an English teacher at Ji University's affiliated high school. However, due to the approaching winter break, Shi Yao's internship was scheduled to be after the Spring Festival. After the Lantern Festival, it was almost time for Shi Yao to go to work. Having never lectured before, she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. So before reporting to the academy, she used Lin Jiayi as a guinea pig and attempted to conduct 2 classes. However, the results weren't too good. In the end, as she was lecturing, she ended up falling asleep with the students. Not long after the Spring Festival, spring arrived. After half a month of internship, Shi Yao was already able to handle the students with ease. She had a good personality, was beautiful and taught the top class of the school, so she really didn't have to worry about anything. Instead, she was especially liked by the students. As such, Shi Yao also learned a lot about the affairs of the students' families. For example, Wang Xiaoning said that her mother was pregnant with a second child. For example, Zhang Xiao said that her father found her a stepmother and she got pregnant. For example, Xia Tingting said that her mother was pregnant again. Because it was her third child, she aborted it. Every day when Shi Yao returned home after class, she would chat with Lin Jiege about school matters. As they chatted, she eventually came to a conclusion. There had been a lot of people getting pregnant recently. A second ago she was lying on the sofa in Lin Jiege's embrace, munching on the grapes that he had stuffed into her mouth as she told him this conclusion. But a second later she suddenly felt nauseous and she abruptly leaped up from the sofa. Rushing to the bathroom, she began retching into the basin. Chapter 931. Shi Yao's series of reactions came too abruptly. Caught completely off guard, Lin Jiege only realized what was going on when he heard Shi Yao vomiting. He quickly got up and rushed to the washroom. Yao, why did you suddenly vomit? Are you feeling unwell? After stopping her vomiting, she raised her head and shook her head at Lin Jiege through the mirror. She was just about to respond to him when another wave of nausea struck her, causing her to bend over and vomit once more. Lin Jiege hurriedly reached out to pat Shi Yao's back. Seeing that she wasn't vomiting anything at all, he couldn't help but frown and say, "This won't do. Let's go to the hospital." As he said those words, Lin Jiege pulled on Shi Yao's hand. Shi Yao resisted Lin Jiege's hand for a moment, and when the nausea subsided a little she said, "There's no need to go through so much trouble. I'm fine. Perhaps it's because the food in the school canteen was a little oily, so I've been feeling a little nauseous ever since I got home. Did you eat something unclean? Or is it a stomach problem?" Lin Jiege asked. But in the end he still insisted on his opinion. "No matter what, it's best to let the doctor take a look at you. I don't have a fever or diarrhea, so it's definitely not something I ate. My stomach doesn't hurt either, so it can't be a stomach problem. It's too troublesome to go to the hospital in the middle of the night. I still have an early class tomorrow and I'll be wasting a lot of time if I have to go to the hospital." Shi Yao turned on the tap and filled herself with a cup of warm water to rinse her mouth. Putting aside vomiting, even the discomfort in her stomach had disappeared without a trace. Thus she stood her ground and said, "Besides, look at me. I'm fine now, so there's really no need for us to make a trip to the hospital." Lin Jiege was still a little worried, so he stared at Shi Yao and asked her a few more times. After confirming that she was really fine, he finally agreed to her request. But in the end he still said, "Let's make things clear first. If you still feel unwell, you'll have to go to the hospital." Seeing that Lin Jiege had agreed to her request, Shi Yao nodded her head vehemently and replied with a few times. After that, she washed her hands and returned to the sofa with Lin Jiege to continue watching television. After dinner, she suddenly had a craving for grapes, so Lin Jiege specially drove to a nearby supermarket to buy them. When Shi Yao came out of the bathroom, she looked at the grapes and for some reason she suddenly lost her appetite. All of a sudden she felt like eating watermelon. It was fortunate that Auntie Sun had brought a huge watermelon over a few days ago, so Lin Jiege didn't have to head out in the middle of the night. Thus he headed straight to the dining room to help Shi Yao cut the watermelon. She had been vomiting a little back, so after he cut the watermelon, Lin Jiege prepared a cup of warm milk for her. By the time Lin Jiege returned from the dining room with a tray of watermelon and milk, Shi Yao, who had been hugging a pillow and staring intently at the television just a moment ago, was already leaning against the sofa, fast asleep. Lin Jiege didn't wake Shi Yao up. He carefully placed the things in his hands on the table before bending down to carry Shi Yao into the master bedroom. Lin and Lin 2 Lin Jai Bi Yao Yao Don Yao and. Chapter 932. When she was at work he would always send her messages and occasionally when he was free they would talk on the phone. But lately the frequency of her replying to his messages had been very slow, and the speed at which she would pick up his calls was also very slow. The only explanation she would give him was that she was sleepy, so she fell asleep on the table. She would always use this excuse to reply to him, causing him to think that she had found a new lover in school. 2 days ago he had even disguised himself and sneaked over to her school to observe her. Only after confirming that she was really sleeping did he feel reassured and returned to the company to continue with his meeting. Speaking of which, it was really strange. In the past she wouldn't even sleep at 1 or 2 in the evening, but for the past week, she would be so sleepy that she couldn't even open her eyes before 10. By 9 in the morning he had already tidied up, but she was still lazing around in bed. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be anything wrong with Soft Bun's body. Before she started working he had accompanied her for a full body checkup and she seemed to be in perfect health. Could it be that Soft Bun was feeling extremely sleepy due to the arrival of spring? With this thought in mind, he carefully covered Yao with the blanket again. Gazing at her sleeping face, he suddenly recalled that he had a client meeting the night before yesterday, so after sending her home, he had returned to the company to work overtime. By the time he returned, she was already asleep. Yesterday at 9:30 he had received an overseas call, and by the time he hung up she had already fallen asleep once more. Today, it would have been fine if she didn't count, but it had been quite a few days since he last greeted her. It was no wonder why he felt like something was missing recently. It turned out that he had been buying fewer condoms than usual. At this rate, wouldn't he end up malnourished? No, this won't do. I have to accompany Soft Bun to mark the students' homework tomorrow. After that, I have to coax Soft Bun to bed so that I can replenish her nutrients before she falls asleep. The next day, Yao was still woken up by Lin Jier's voice, not by her alarm. Even though she had slept for nearly 10 hours, she still felt that she hadn't slept enough. However, the thought that she had to go to work soon made her perk up. She climbed out of bed and headed to the bathroom to wash up. While she was brushing her teeth, the nauseating sensation from the previous night resurfaced once more. Yao retched into the wash basin and when she finally recovered, a deep frown appeared on her forehead. What's wrong with me? I've been feeling nauseous since yesterday. It's already the second day but this feeling still hasn't disappeared. Could there really be something wrong with me? Yao Yao? Yao Yao. Lin Jier's voice sounded from outside the bedroom, calling Yao out for breakfast. Yao quickly reined in her thoughts and replied to Lin Jier. She quickly rinsed her mouth and washed her face before walking out of the bedroom. Breakfast was Yao's favorite meat buns and tofu pudding, but not only did Yao not have the slightest desire to eat them, she even felt nauseous just looking at them. On the other hand, the pickled cucumbers that she usually didn't like to eat along with the millet porridge, she actually ate a huge plate of them. It was only when Lin Jier noticed that she was eating too much pickled food and stopped her that she finally gave up. After breakfast, as usual, Lin Jier drove Yao to her school. It had only been half an hour since Yao woke up and finished her breakfast, but as she sat in the car and basked in the warm spring sun, she suddenly felt a little drowsy, lazy, and even a little tired. Chapter 933. After arriving at the entrance of G University's affiliated high school, Yao got out of the car and watched as Lin Jier's car drove away before turning around to head back to school. But before she could make a move, someone suddenly called out to her, "Teacher Shi." Hearing the commotion, Yao raised her head and saw her student, Zhang Xiao, hopping down from a red car and running toward her excitedly. Yao shot Zhang Xiao a warm smile and just as she was about to greet her, she suddenly caught sight of the person in the driver's seat through the lowered window of the red car, and the smile on her lips abruptly froze. She recognized that person. It was an old acquaintance. Even though it had been 2 years since they last met, Yao could still easily recognize that the other party was her former schoolmate, Qin Yiran. Just like back when they were still in university, Qin Yiran still had her makeup done up exquisitely, but at this moment, it was more appropriate for her to wear heavy makeup. Both her wrists and her ears were adorned with sparkling jewels. She didn't seem to have expected to meet Yao here either, and a look of surprise appeared on her face. However, Yao didn't meet Qin Yiran's gaze for too long because Zhang Xiao had already walked up to her and intimately reached out to grab her hand. "Teacher Shi, good morning." Snapping out of her daze, Yao lowered her head to look at Zhang Xiao and said, "Student Zhang Xiao, good morning." Seeing that Qin Yiran wasn't intending to greet her, Yao naturally wouldn't take the initiative to greet Qin Yiran either. Thus she pulled Zhang Xiao into the school. On the way to the classroom, Yao couldn't help but ask Zhang Xiao, "Zhang Xiao, is the person who drove you here your relative?" "No." Zhang Xiao shook her head with a displeased look on her face. Teacher sure, she's the pregnant stepmother that my father found for me. I really hate her and I don't agree to her becoming my stepmother, so my father doesn't dare to bring her home. In the past she didn't even bother to pay attention to me, probably because my father is rich. After seeing how much weight I hold in my father's heart, she's been trying to curry favor with me like a madman lately, buying me clothes and sending me to school. But even so, I still don't like her. Teacher sure, I know that life isn't easy for my father. My mother passed away after giving birth to me, so it's only a matter of time before my father finds a stepmother for me, but I don't want that woman to become my stepmother. I suspect that the child in her womb isn't my father's. They all think that I'm too young to understand anything, but the truth is that I know everything. Teacher sure, do you know that I was there when that woman met my father? She was the woman of one of my uncles back then, and for some reason she hooked up with my father. Teacher sure, if only you were the stepmother that my father found for me. That way I would be able to see you all the time. Teacher sure, why did you find yourself a boyfriend so early in life? Hearing those words, Shi Yao couldn't help but chuckle. If Lin Jiage were to hear those words, he would surely be overwhelmed with jealousy. She reached out to stroke Zhang Zhao's head and said, "It's fine. Even after you graduate you can still come to school to play with me." Hearing those words, Zhang Zhao immediately cheered up. Teacher sure, as long as you don't find me annoying, I'll come to play with you every day even after I graduate. Chapter 934. After Zhang Zhao returned to the classroom, Shi Yao headed to her office. Sitting in front of her desk, Shi Yao couldn't help but remark, "This world sure is full of coincidences at times." She had thought that regardless of whether it was Qin Yiran, Liang Mumu or Han Jing, they were all in the past, never to appear in her life again. Who could have thought that Qin Yiran would actually get involved with her student? Based on Zhang Zhao's description, Qin Yiran probably didn't manage to find a decent job after graduation, so she ended up fooling around with some rich men. However, when she met Zhang Zhao's father, she began thinking that she could make use of her son's prestige to soar up the tree and become a phoenix. Unfortunately, no matter how good her plan was, she never expected Zhang Zhao's father to care so much about his daughter. Zhang Zhao didn't like her, so she couldn't rely on the child in her belly to successfully enter a wealthy family. In the past, Shi Yao wouldn't feel tired even if she had to attend 4 classes a day. But today she had no idea what was wrong with her. It had only been a single class, but her legs were already turning into jelly, and she looked like she was going to faint at any moment. It wasn't easy for her to force herself to sit through the entire lesson, and by now she could be said to be completely drained. Back in the office, she sat on the chair and did not want to move. It was fortunate that she didn't have any lessons in the morning, so after a short break, she flipped open her textbook and began writing her lesson plans. As she was writing, she suddenly felt nauseous once more. Unable to make it to the washroom in time, she could only grab the small trash can on the table and vomit into it. As she vomited, she could vaguely feel a throbbing pain in her abdomen. These signs were really too abnormal. While Shi Yao was deep in thought, she suddenly retched once more. The person sitting next to her was Teacher Li. He was an intern teacher who had just graduated just like her, but he was a guy. Seeing that she kept vomiting, he couldn't help but ask in concern, "Teacher Shi, why is your face so pale? Do you want to go to the school hospital?" Hearing those words, Zhang Laoshi, who was seated opposite Shi Yao, raised her head to look at Shi Yao. She was already a mother of 2, so she was much calmer than Li Laoshi. "Shi Laoshi, when did you start vomiting so much? How many days have you been throwing up?" Shi Yao replied, "I started vomiting yesterday." Zhang Laoshi didn't say a word. Instead, he stood up and walked up to Shi Yao before asking softly, "What about your period? Are they here? If you didn't come, you look like you're pregnant." As Zhang Laoshi spoke, she glared at Teacher Li, who had come over to eavesdrop on her conversation with Shi Yao. "Why are you butting in on the topic of women?" Teacher Li, who had been scolded, sat up straight. Zhang Laoshi walked up to Shi Yao and said, "You should go to the hospital for a checkup. You can't go wrong if you listen to me." Shi Yao quickly thanked Zhang Laoshi with a smile. After which, she returned to her desk and sat down, took out her phone and took a look at her notebook. It was then that she realized that she hadn't had her period last month. As it was her first time interning as a teacher, she had focused all her attention on her students and did not notice these details. Now that he thought about it, vomiting, lethargy, feeling weak all over, and a drastic change in taste, All of these were very consistent with the pattern of pregnancy. Could it really be, as teacher Zhang said, that she was pregnant? Chapter 935. However, even if she had used contraceptives, it wasn't 100% effective. Could it be that she and Lin Jiege had encountered that extremely small chance of pregnancy? The more Shi Yao thought about it, the more uneasy she felt. This was especially so when she recalled how her lower abdomen was throbbing in pain while she was lecturing earlier. Feeling a little worried, she recalled that she didn't have any classes in the afternoon, so she applied for a leave of absence and listened to Zhang Laosher's advice to head to the hospital for a checkup. Knowing that Lin Jiege had a meeting in the afternoon, Shi Yao didn't disturb him. Instead, she gave Leng Yuan a call and had the latter pick her up from school before accompanying her to Beijing's largest maternity hospital. Registering, lining up, and a series of checkups. By the time Shi Yao received the results, it was already 3 in the afternoon. Just as Zhang Laosher had said, she was really pregnant, and she had been pregnant for nearly 2 months now. The doctor in charge of her suggested that she go for an ultrasound, and by the time she received the results, it was already around 4 in the afternoon. After taking a look at the scan, the doctor told Shi Yao that everything was fine and reminded her to come back for another checkup in a month's time. By the time Shi Yao and Leng Yuan walked out of the hospital, the spring breeze was already blowing in their faces, carrying the fragrance of freshly bloomed winter jasmine. Shi Yao's mind, which had been in a muddled state ever since she found out that she was pregnant, finally cleared up a little. She was really pregnant. Even if she had used contraceptives, the extremely small chance of pregnancy had really happened to her and Lin Jiege. Shi Yao felt that everything was so surreal that when Leng Yuan opened the car door and called her in, she couldn't help but ask, "Yuan, am I really pregnant?" And as Leng Yuan started the car, she shot a glance at Shi Yao. Recalling how young Shi Yao was and how shocked she was, she couldn't help but ask, "What do you plan to do with this child?" "What do you mean by plan?" Shi Yao asked Leng Yuan in return. It was only then that she realized that Leng Yuan was asking her such a question because her reaction had been too bizarre. Thus she replied, "Of course we're going to give birth to the child. It's just a matter of time before Lin Jiege and I are going to have a child. Now that we suddenly have a child, we can't possibly abort it. I just find it a little inconceivable." Shi Yao paused for a moment before recalling that she hadn't shared this piece of good news with Lin Jiege yet. So she took out her phone intending to send Lin Jiege a message. But halfway through, she suddenly felt that it wouldn't be too exciting to tell him such an explosive piece of news through text. Thus she turned to Leng Yuan and said, "Yuan, can you send me to Lin Jiege's office?" By the time Shi Yao arrived at Lin Jiege's office, it was around 5 in the morning. Lin Jiege was in the middle of a meeting, so Shi Yao didn't have anyone disturb him and headed straight to his office. Perhaps it was because she had been rushing around the hospital for too long that she fell asleep on Lin Jiege's sofa while waiting for him. By the time she woke up, she felt a tickling sensation on her ear. She frowned slightly before realizing that Lin Jiege was kissing her. Dodging Lin Jiege's kiss, she glanced out the window and saw that the sky had already darkened. Subconsciously she asked, "What time is it?" "It's almost 7. As Lin Jiege replied, his lips pressed against her neck once more, and his hand even slipped under her clothes. Having been together with Lin Jiege for 2 years, Shi Yao naturally knew what he was up to. A slight frown appeared on her forehead as she subconsciously grabbed Lin Jiege's hand and said, "Lin Jiege, wait a moment. I have something to tell you." Chapter 936. Having been together with Lin Jiege for 2 years, Shi Yao naturally knew what he was up to. With a slight frown on her forehead, she subconsciously grabbed Lin Jiege's hand and said, "Lin Jiege, I have something to tell you." Lin Jiege kissed the corner of Shi Yao's lips as he muttered something inaudible. It didn't take long for him to extricate himself from her grasp and grow restless once more. Faced with Lin Jiege's perfunctory response, Shi Yao was a little displeased, and her tone grew a little heavier as she said, "Lin Jiege." Lin Jiege's actions didn't stop, but his lips moved away from Shi Yao a little as he said, "You talk about your stuff and I'll do mine. We'll do it at the same time, do ice cream balls at the same time." But just as Lin Jiege was about to kiss her once more, Shi Yao suddenly reached out to hold his face back, preventing him from getting any closer. Lin Jiege, I really have something very serious to tell you. Despite being stopped by her, Lin Jiege didn't show the slightest hint of anger. Instead, he grabbed her hand and began kissing it. At the same time, his other hand was already stripping off her clothes with greater fervor. Lin Jiege, I'm really going to get angry if you continue like this. Yeah, I was wrong. Lin Jiege admitted his mistake, but his body had already pinned Shi Yao beneath him. Lin Jiege. Shi Yao panicked. She struggled with all her might, but there was no way she could withstand Lin Jiege's strength. In the end, she could only threaten him. Lin Jiege, make your choice. Do you want to be tied to the bed or locked in the bathroom? Lin Jiege, I'm telling you, we're going to have another member in our family. Seeing that her threats were ineffective, Shi Yao decided to throw out her trump card. Oh. Lin Jiege replied nonchalantly. Pressing down on the struggling Shi Yao, he skillfully took off her clothes before placing his lips on her fair back. With a seductive tone, he asked, Yao Yao, do you want to keep a dog or a cat? Was it really that hard to understand what she meant earlier? He actually thought that she was going to have a pet when she said that she was going to have another member? Shi Yao frowned as she glanced at the man whose eyes were filled with lust. A thought suddenly came to her mind and she turned around, hooked her arms around his neck and winked at him. With a seductive tone, she asked, Why don't you take a guess? Lin Jiege had been missing Shi Yao a lot lately, and seeing her in such a state made his heart itch even more. He lowered his head and kissed Shi Yao's neck and chest. No matter what you raise, I'll always support you. Really? A hint of delight could be seen on Shi Yao's face as she asked Lin Jiege. After which her slender fingers fell on Lin Jiege's belt, and with a light tug she undid his belt. They had been together for 2 years. She naturally knew where he couldn't stand it the most, so she focused on that area. She deliberately made her movements very slow, seductive and rhythmic, teasing him until his mouth was dry and his body was on fire. Lin Jiege really couldn't stand the torment of being in heaven one moment and then hell the next. He grabbed her hand and couldn't wait to dive straight into the main topic. However, just as he was about to make his move, the seductive woman suddenly said calmly, We're going to have another member in our family. It's not a cat or a dog but your greatest love rival in history, a baby. Lin Jiege's movements didn't stop there. Shi Yao wasn't in a hurry either. She continued speaking leisurely, to put it simply, I'm pregnant. Chapter 937. As if someone had sealed Lin Jiege's acupoints, he suddenly froze on the spot. 3 seconds later, he raised his head to look at Shi Yao and said, Yao Yao, this joke isn't funny at all. Look at me, I'm about to go soft from fear. As he spoke, he lowered his head to kiss Shi Yao once more. However, before he could make a move, the prepared Shi Yao had already taken out the test report from her bag and flung it at Lin Jiege's face. Look at it yourself. Lin Jiege touched his stinging cheek as he lowered his head to look at the few pieces of paper before him. With a perplexed look on his face, he reached out to pick them up one by one. After reading the first report, a slight frown appeared on his forehead. After reading the second report, the frown on his forehead deepened even further. After reading the third report, a deep frown appeared between his brows. After reading the fourth report, just as he had said, his heart had completely gone soft. Looking at the images before her, Shi Yao pushed Lin Jiege away in satisfaction. She sat up and tidied up her clothes before admiring the petrified look on Lin Jiege's face, waiting for him to come back to his senses. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. When Shi Yao counted down to 70, Lin Jiege looked at the final report in his hands and blinked his eyes. He blinked his eyes several times before staring at the report with a stiff expression for a few more seconds. Finally, he raised his head to look at Shi Yao and said, Yao, you're getting more and more mischievous. Your jokes are getting bigger and bigger. Tell me honestly, how much money did you spend on these fake reports? Forge your head. Without any hesitation, Shi Yao kicked Lin Jiege's knee and said, Lin Jiege, what do you mean by this? Are you going to go back on your word with Little Apple? Lin Jiege groaned in pain. He opened his innocent eyes to look at Shi Yao and asked in bewilderment, Little Apple? That's right. I really wanted to eat an apple earlier, so I named the child in my stomach Little Apple, Lin Jiege. The child already had a nickname? Seeing that Lin Jiege wasn't speaking, Shi Yao spoke up once more, Lin Jiege, why aren't you speaking? Do you not welcome little glutinous dumpling? Lin Jiage. This time, before he could respond, Shi Yao had already spoken up. I was craving glutinous rice dumplings again, so I decided to change the baby's nickname to Little Glutinous Rice Dumpling. Lin Jiage. This name sure changes fast. I can't keep up with it at all. What should I do? Lin Jiage, why aren't you saying anything? Don't tell me you think Little Milk Tea isn't your child? Little Milk Tea? In the blink of an eye, she wanted to drink milk tea again, so she changed the name to Little Milk Tea. This time, Lin Jiage didn't dare to wait for Shi Yao to speak up. He quickly replied, no. For some reason he felt as if he was dreaming. He pinched his thigh, and when he felt a piercing pain he turned to Shi Yao and asked with a look of disbelief, Yao Yao, are these test results real? Shi Yao nodded and replied with on. Finally, she had heard something that sounded reasonable to her. So, Yao Yao, are you really pregnant? I'm going to be a father. Chapter 938. What? Shi Yao raised her head and glared at Lin Jiage. Lin Jiage realized that he had let the cat out of the bag, so he quickly corrected himself. I said it was too late, I knew it too late. I should have received the good news as soon as I returned to the office. Hearing those words, Shi Yao's expression softened. Lin Jiage heaved a sigh of relief. It was fortunate that he had reacted quickly enough. If Soft Bun had known what she had said earlier, he probably wouldn't even be able to continue chatting with her under the blanket anymore. Just yesterday he was still thinking that he had been suffering from malnutrition recently, and he needed to nourish himself today. Yet such a shocking piece of news had suddenly fallen upon him. The heavens must be trying to make life difficult for him. Putting aside malnutrition, he might not even be able to nourish himself in the near future. Soft Bun was right. The child in her womb was the greatest love rival in history. No matter how skilled he was at pinching peach blossoms, even if he had 100 guts, no, 1,000 guts, there was no way he would dare to pinch this peach blossom. He had only been together with Soft Bun for 2 years, and they hadn't even had enough of their time together yet. How did she get pregnant? Was it easy for him to fall in love? Why did he have to go through so many twists and turns? Also, what were the nicknames of the child in her womb? Little Apple, Little Milk Tea, Little Glutinous Dumpling, or Little Light Bulb? No, it should be Blinding Big Light Bulb. Looking at Lin Jiage's ever-changing expression, Shi Yao couldn't help but feel that he wasn't moved or excited. So she stretched out her hand and waved it in front of his face. Lin Jiage. Why do I feel like you're unhappy? Of course he was unhappy. There was suddenly a formidable rival who wanted to snatch his wife away from him, and it was a rival that he had to support with his own money. It would be a wonder if he was happy. However, Lin Jiage didn't dare to speak the truth. He shook his head vehemently. How could that be? I'm very happy. I'm going to be a father soon. Just thinking about it feels like a dream. As he said those words, Lin Jiage felt as if his heart was bleeding. Perhaps it was due to his guilty conscience, but he was afraid that Shi Yao would see through his act, so he quickly changed the topic. Yao Yao, let's discuss our marriage. Even though he didn't intend to have a child, he couldn't allow Soft Bun to abort the child out of the blue. After all, an abortion was harmful to the body and he couldn't do something like that. Besides, they were going to get married sooner or later. He had planned to hold the wedding after she had graduated, but she was pregnant now. If they didn't hold the wedding in a few months later, it would become a huge problem. If they didn't hold the wedding, others would gossip about it. Lin Jiage, they and Soft. With such Yao Lin Yao, we have the Yao I and you I Lin, we should hold the wedding. Lin, if and you will, your wedding soon. As he spoke, he picked up his phone and gave his grandfather a call. Lin said, and after hanging up the phone, old Master Lin, who was sitting in front of the television, could not stop smiling. When Auntie Sun brought the fruits over to Grandpa Lin, she took a look at the television. The main character in the television was critically ill, and a bunch of people were bawling their eyes out. Wasn't funny at all, but wasn't it a little too bizarre for Grandpa Lin to be laughing like that? Perplexed, Auntie Sun couldn't help but take a few more glances at old Mr. Lin. Noticing her gaze, old Mr. Lin chuckled as he picked up a grape and stuffed it into his mouth. Auntie Sun, are you going to ask me why I'm so happy? Before Auntie Sun could say anything, old Mr. Lin had already burst into laughter once more. Auntie Sun, don't look at me. Just look at me and I'll never tell you that I have a great-grandson. Chapter 939. Auntie Sun, you didn't want to tell me but you couldn't control yourself and spilled the beans. Auntie Sun, congratulations old mister. You're finally going to have a great-grandson soon. Upon hearing those words, a deep frown appeared on Grandpa Lin's forehead. He stared at Auntie Sun in bewilderment and asked curiously, how did you know that I have a great-grandson? Auntie Sun, old mister, you said it yourself. Hearing those words, Grandpa Lin suddenly realized that he had accidentally spilled the beans in his excitement. In an instant he glared at Auntie Sun in displeasure and like a child he spat out, Auntie Sun, how can you do this to me? You're trying to get my secret. Auntie Sun, she didn't say anything at all earlier. All she did was look at him a little longer and he said it himself. Grandpa Lin quickly waved his hands with a forgiving look. Forget it. Seeing that Yao Yao is pregnant, I won't hold it against you anymore. Auntie Sun felt aggrieved but she could only say, thank you old mister. Grandpa Lin picked up the teacup on the table and slowly drank half of it. Even though she got pregnant 2 months later than I expected, it's good that she's pregnant. As he spoke, old Master Lin couldn't help but ridicule his grandson. There must be something wrong with that brat. If it wasn't for him, would I have waited from November last year to May this year before hearing the good news of Yao Yao's pregnancy? Auntie Sun couldn't help but defend Lin Jiage. Old mister, pregnancy isn't something that young master can decide alone. What do you mean by that? Are you saying that there's something wrong with Yao Yao? Let me tell you that's impossible. There's definitely something wrong with Jiage and Yao Yao. Grandpa Lin glared at Auntie Sun furiously. Auntie Sun. That wasn't what she meant. He was just feeling sorry for young Master Lin. The old man was growing more and more fond of Miss Shi, to the point where he couldn't even speak carelessly. Auntie Sun hurriedly explained, old mister, how could I dare to say that there's something wrong with Miss Shi? I just think that you're being too biased toward Miss Shi. Those who don't know might even think that Miss Shi is your biological granddaughter and the young master is your grandson-in-law. Old Mr. Lin. If Yao Yao is really my granddaughter, I definitely won't let her marry that brat. Auntie Sun. Alright, there was nothing she could do. She could only choose to sympathize with the young master for a minute. Auntie Sun. Old sir, if young master were to hear these words of yours, he would surely feel sad. He would think that his existence in your heart is to marry Miss Shi. Old Master Lin. It's not all about marrying Yao Yao. Hearing those words, Auntie Sun couldn't help but feel gratified for Lin Jiage. At the end of the day he was still a beloved grandson. Old Master Lin. And getting Yao Yao pregnant. Auntie Sun was rendered speechless. If Auntie Sun were to stay any longer she was afraid that she'd die of heartache. Thus she quickly found an excuse to leave and said, Old mister, I'll head to the kitchen to take a look. I'm still cooking soup. Old Master Lin waved his hand and said, go on. Just as Auntie Sun was about to turn around, Old Master Lin suddenly called out to her, right, I want you to keep Yao Yao's pregnancy a secret. Don't let anyone know about it. Auntie Sun, yes old master. Old Master Lin sighed and sat on the sofa to make another call. Then he got up and entered the dining room. Old Mr. Lin was getting on in years and his taste buds were getting lighter and lighter. The fish stewed by Chef Xiao Song was a little salty to old Mr. Lin. As he ate, he reminded Xiao Song, next time make the fish lighter. Xiao Song hurriedly walked over and wanted to take the fish away. Old sir, do you want me to make you another one? Chapter 941. Even though Lin Jiage harbored a deep grudge toward the fetus in Shi Yao's womb, after hanging up the call with his grandfather, he noticed that Shi Yao was only wearing a jacket. So he couldn't help but shout for her to wait for a moment. Then he headed into the resting room, took out a scarf that he usually used in winter, and wrapped it around Shi Yao's neck. Even though it's spring right now, it's still a little chilly at night. Try not to get exposed to the wind lest you catch a cold. If that happens, you won't be able to take your medicine. After saying those words, Lin Jiage took another look at Shi Yao and noticed that she was wearing a pair of 5-centimeter high heels. He couldn't help but frown as he said, from today onward, you can't wear heels anymore. It'll be terrible if you fall. As he said those words, Lin Jiage held Shi Yao's hand and took 2 steps out of the room. However, he still couldn't help but feel a little worried, so he decided to support her instead. Seeing how cautious Lin Jiege was, Yao couldn't help but say, "Lin Jiege, I'm not that delicate." "Even if you're not that delicate, you still have to be treated as such." While they were speaking, the elevator that Lin Jiege and Yao boarded stopped on the 6th floor. The door opened and a man was standing at the entrance of the elevator. He reeked of cigarette smoke. Lin Jiege frowned slightly. Just as the man was about to enter the elevator, he reached out to stop him and said, "I'm sorry, but can I trouble you to take the elevator with me?" Yao looked at Lin Jiege in bewilderment. Just as she was about to ask Lin Jiege why he was doing this, Lin Jiege suddenly turned to look at the elevator entrance with a stern expression. Just like Yao, the perplexed man spoke up once more, "Smoking is harmful to one's health. You should know this, right? Secondhand smoke is even more harmful to one's body. You should know this as well, right? If you didn't, I've already told you about it, so you should already know. Since you do, you should take care of the pregnant lady and not come in." Hearing those words, Yao finally understood Lin Jiege's intentions. She tugged on Lin Jiege's clothes in an attempt to stop him from going overboard. "Lin Jiege." At the same time, the man standing at the entrance of the elevator also spoke up. "Sir, I'm not smoking." Ignoring Yao's actions and the man's words, Lin Jiege persisted in his opinion. With a straight face, he looked at the man who was staring at him as if he was a lunatic and spoke with conviction. "It's true that you're not smoking, but there's the smell of cigarettes on you. It's a pity that the smell of cigarettes is so strong. If you were to come in, what would happen to my fiancée? What if it affected the child in her belly? You can shoulder such a responsibility." Before Lin Jiege could finish his words, the man standing outside the elevator had already reached out to press the close button, and the elevator doors slowly closed, silencing Lin Jiege's righteous words. As the elevator continued descending, Yao expressed her opinion on Lin Jiege's earlier actions. "Lin Jiege, your actions earlier were a little too exaggerated." "Did I? I don't think it was exaggerated at all. The stench on him was so strong. What if he choked on you and the child in your belly?" Lin Jiege had always adhered to the 3 obediences and 4 virtues. When Soft Bun went out, he had to obey her orders. When Soft Bun was wrong, he had to obey her blindly. When Soft Bun put on makeup, he had to obey her generosity. When Soft Bun was angry, he had to obey her, and when Soft Bun's birthday was remembered. Chapter 942. In Yao's eyes, Lin Jiege's so-called restraint was only getting worse. Be it getting into or out of the car or walking on foot, Lin Jiege was treating her as if she was a queen in his harem, carefully supporting her, afraid that she might trip and fall. Whenever there were too many people around, Lin Jiege would pull her into his embrace to protect her. There were even some people who tried to get too close to her, but even when they were still a meter away from each other, he would warn them to be careful of pregnant women. This made it so that no one was able to get within a 2-meter radius of Yao. Yao suddenly felt like eating Cantonese cuisine, so Lin Jiege brought her to the best Cantonese restaurant in Beijing. Along the way, he drove very carefully, and when he was still 50 meters away from the car ahead, he would step on the brakes. But that wasn't all. Even when they arrived at the entrance of the Cantonese restaurant, he still refused to let her get out of the car. Instead, he ran into the restaurant and checked the route she would take to ensure that there were no watermarks on the ground. Only after confirming that there were no slippery spots on the ground did he run to the car and carefully help her out of the car before escorting her into the suite. After taking a seat and ordering the dishes, Yao wanted to wash her hands, but Lin Jiege stopped her. Using the excuse that there was water in the washroom and that she might fall, he had a waiter buy a wash basin from the supermarket next door. Then he personally filled it with water and brought it over to Yao to help her wash her hands. Lin Jiege wasn't tired at all, but Yao was on the verge of going insane. She couldn't help but accuse Lin Jiege of lying to her. He said that he would control himself, but he didn't. Lin Jiege blinked at Yao innocently and said, "Yao, you're wrongly accusing me. I'm really trying my best to control myself. If not for the fact that I respect your opinion, I would have closed off the entire road that we're driving on. I even wanted to book this entire restaurant so that you're the only one enjoying this meal. I even wanted to hire a few security guards to surround you from all directions to prevent others from approaching. At the end of his words, Yao felt her head throbbing in pain. Right, that's enough. Lin Jiage obediently shut his mouth and took out a napkin to wipe Shi Yao's hands clean. After which, he used a cloth to dry up the water droplets on the floor before sitting down in front of Shi Yao and serving her meal. He was really serving her. He was serving her even better than the emperor in the back palace. Throughout the entire process, Shi Yao didn't need to move her chopsticks at all. All she needed to do was to move her eyeballs. When she looked at the dish, Lin Jiage would feed it to her mouth, and when she frowned at the dish, he would immediately move it far away. By the end of the meal, Lin Jiage had a radiant smile on his face, as if nothing had happened at all. However, Shi Yao couldn't help but feel exhausted on his behalf. On his way home, the roads were extremely smooth, but Lin Jiage maintained the slowest speed he could muster. Shi Yao asked anxiously, "Lin Jiage, why aren't you going down to push the cart?" "If it wasn't for the fact that I can't move it, I really would have done so." Lin Jiage consoled Shi Yao as he spoke. "Oh, don't panic. Let's walk slowly. It'll be safer this way." When they reached home, Shi Yao thought that it was finally over, so she wanted to take a bath and rest. However, Lin Jiage insisted on accompanying her throughout the entire process. Suppressing the urge to pummel Lin Jiage, Shi Yao waved her hand at him and said, "I'll bathe later. I suddenly feel like drinking yogurt. I'll get it for you." Chapter 943. After Shi Yao was done bathing and changing into her pajamas, she let Lin Jiage into her bedroom. She was indeed a little tired, so she lay down on the bed and closed her eyes. Lin Jiage didn't disturb her. Instead, he stayed by her side and accompanied her to sleep. Not too long later, Shi Yao fell into a deep sleep. It was still early, so Lin Jiage didn't feel sleepy at all. But in such a quiet bedroom, looking at Shi Yao, who was no different from usual, his eyes couldn't help but soften. The scene from 2 years ago when they first got together was still vivid in his mind, as if it had just happened. In the blink of an eye, she was pregnant with his child. Life was truly a wondrous journey. If you met the right person, every day, every minute, and every second of your life would be filled with surprises. In his days, Lin Jiage's hand uncontrollably rose up and landed lightly on Shi Yao's abdomen. Her waist was still as slender and light as ever. He found it hard to believe that their child had already been silently born from within. He had to admit that he didn't have any feelings toward the sudden appearance of a child, but he loved this child because the child was hers. Lin Jiage didn't know how long he had been staring at Shi Yao silently for when his phone suddenly lit up. He took out his phone and took a look. It was a message from Lu Benlai. "Boss, do you want to come out for a drink?" Had it been in the past, Lin Jiage would have rejected Lu Benlai's invitation unless Shi Yao came along. However, Shi Yao was already asleep and he didn't feel sleepy at all. As he agreed to it, by the time Lin Jiage arrived, Xia Shangzhou and Lu Benlai were already drinking. When they saw him, they raised their heads in bewilderment and looked behind him. Seeing that the person they were looking for wasn't there, they couldn't help but ask, "Boss, where's little Junior?" Lin Jiage replied nonchalantly, "She's resting," before taking a seat. Lu Benlai was drinking real wine, but Xia Shangzhou was drinking Sprite. He couldn't help but frown. Lu Benlai understood what Lin Jiage was trying to say. "Boss, are you thinking that old Xia is really boring? Every time we come out for a drink, he's always drinking Sprite." Lin Jiage nodded his head in agreement before pouring himself half a glass of wine. "Xia Shangzhou, it's not that I don't want to drink, but I can't. Who knows when Boss Lin will call me to drive him to do something." Lu Benlai raised his wine glass and clinked it against Lin Jiage as he muttered under his breath, "You always say the same thing, old Xia. I can already recite it backwards. It's not that I want to nag at you, but we're graduates of G University, and yet you're still stuck as a special assistant. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? It's not like Boss hasn't told you that if you need anything you can just ask. I just don't get it. Are you really that afraid of Boss's sister? Feng and that you don you, Xia Shangzhou. No, it has nothing to do with fear. It's the contract. I signed the contract back then, so I have to fulfill it. This is a matter of integrity." Lin Jiage and Xia Yao said he spr Yao she didn't mu. And Yao he away at to date and spr and Jia Xia and Yao and Lin. Yao Xia he. Chapter 944. Lu Benlai, what's bothering you? Xia Shangzhou, did you get into an argument with little Junior? How could that be? Lin Jiage replied as he took another sip of wine. Maybe it's because I'm going to be a father, so I'm feeling vexed. Lu Benlai. How shameless. Xia Shangzhou tilted his head to the side. In the end, this was still a public display of affection. Even though Lu Benlai and Xia Shangzhou were dealt a heavy blow, they still managed to quickly adjust their emotions and congratulate Lin Jiage. After putting down his wine cup, Lu Benlai couldn't help but ask, since little Junior is pregnant, is your marriage going to be held soon? Lin Jiage replied with an before replying, it should be next month. Lu Benlai and Xia Shangzhou congratulated each other once more. Following which, Xia Shangzhou, who hadn't drunk any wine at all, suddenly exclaimed, I always thought that Song Chaoshi would be the first to get married, and eldest would be the last to get married. But who would have thought that eldest would be the first to get married? I'm guessing that after eldest gets married, it'll be Song Chaoshi's turn, and then it'll be you, old Lu. At this point, Xia Shangzhou couldn't help but ask Lu Benlai curiously. Speaking of which, old Lu Jr. Leng Yuan is going to graduate soon. Aren't you going to propose to her? It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned Leng Yuan, but the mention of Leng Yuan made Lu Benlai, who was in a good mood a moment ago, tighten his grip around the wine cup in his hand. His eyelids were lowered so that no one noticed his abnormal behavior. After pouring the wine into his mouth, he raised his head and looked at Xia Shangzhou with a smile. Of course I'm going to propose to her. After saying those words, Lu Benlai's eyelids drooped down once more. As if he had encountered something difficult to understand, he gulped down another cup of wine before turning to Xia Shangzhou and asking, Old Xia, what about you? Aren't you going to find a girlfriend? Of course I'll find a girlfriend. Xia Shangzhou replied calmly, not revealing the slightest hint that he already had someone he liked. But it's still up to fate. Despite hearing those words, Lin Jiage remained silent. He raised his wine glass and took a sip, indicating that he agreed with the other party's words. Lu Benlai had ordered quite a lot of beer, but most of it had ended up in his stomach. He wasn't drunk, but he was a little tipsy. He stared at Lin Jiage and Xia Shangzhou, and there were a few times when he opened his mouth to ask them something, but he found himself unable to do so. It was only after he gulped down another bottle of beer that he finally managed to speak his mind. There's a brother in my company who has a girlfriend for quite some time now. However, putting aside doing anything intimate with her, she won't even kiss, hug, or hold his hand. What do you think is the reason behind this? Xia Shangzhou took a big gulp of Sprite as if he was drinking hard liquor. Do you even need to ask? It must be that the woman doesn't like the man. Lu Benlai's fingertips trembled and wine spilled out. Without saying a word, he turned to Lin Jiage. Meeting Zhang Xian's gaze, Lin Jiage shook his head and replied, I'm not too sure, but old Xia's words do make sense. Lu Benlai fell silent for a moment before a smile suddenly appeared on his face. Perhaps. As if he hadn't said anything at all, he gestured for Lin Jiage and Xia Shangzhou to continue drinking. Lin Jiage was worried about Shi Yao's pregnancy, so he left at 11 o'clock. Not too long after Lu Benlai left, Xia Shangzhou received a call from Lin Jiai, saying that she wanted to have mala soup in the middle of the night. Lu Benlai was the only one left in the suite. He stared out the window for a while before calling for a waiter to help him give Leng Yuan a call. In less than 20 minutes, Leng Yuan appeared in the suite. Lu Benlai was slumped on the table, completely motionless with a drunken look on his face. Leng Yuan walked up to him and called his name softly, but she didn't reach out to touch him at all. In the end, Lu Benlai was the one who raised his head and looked at Leng Yuan with a drunken look in his eyes, as if he couldn't tell who was who. It took him a long while before he finally called out, Yuan, why did you drink so much? I'll get the waiter to help you into the car so that I can send you home. As she spoke, Leng Yuan stood up and walked out of the suite to call for the waiter. Hearing those words, Lu Benlai's fingers silently clenched into fists. I'm already drunk. She can just casually help me up, but she's not even willing to do that? He stared at Leng Yuan's silhouette for a moment, and just as she was about to leave, he suddenly reached out and grabbed her wrist. His touch struck her like a bolt of lightning, causing her to lose her usual composure. She struggled desperately to break free, but Lu Benlai's grip on her hand only grew tighter and tighter. In fact, he even lowered his head to approach her face. Chapter 945. Leng Nuan looked as if she had just been given a huge fright. She struggled even more furiously than before, and even her body began to tremble uncontrollably. As Lu Benlei's face inched closer and closer, her body trembled even more violently. She tried her best to restrain herself from speaking, but very, very pleading words escaped from her lips. "Let me go. Please let me go. Let me go." Lu Benlei's actions halted for a moment as if he was about to stop. But in just 2 short seconds he seemed to have made up his mind about something, and he lowered his head once more. His lips inched closer and closer to hers, and she could even feel his breath. In that instant the man before her didn't feel like the Lu Benlei she knew. Instead he felt like a man-eating beast in the darkness of the night. Leng Nuan was so scared that tears began trickling down the corners of her eyes. The panicked words that came out of her mouth began to change, and eventually they turned into a shriek. It was true that he liked her and he couldn't bear to part with her. Even though he had made up his mind, he still couldn't bring himself to do it. Just when he was just a centimeter away from her lips, Lu Benlei suddenly stopped. He opened his eyes, only to see her tear-stained face as well as the look of rejection, disgust, hatred and fear on her face. Rejection, disgust, hatred. Lu Benlei stared at her for a moment, but all of a sudden, all of his strength seemed to have left him. His grip on her wrist abruptly disappeared. She easily broke free from him as if he was a dreadful beast. She took a few steps back, widening the distance between the two of them. Only then did she stop. She didn't even look at him. Instead she hugged her arms and leaned against the wall, trembling uncontrollably. Seeing her in such a state made his heart ache. Lu Benlei subconsciously averted his gaze. He could clearly hear her sobbing. He wanted to comfort her, but he knew that if he were to stand up now, she would only become even more flustered and afraid. He stared out the window for a moment before pretending to be unconscious from his drunkenness. Then he slumped onto the table and fell asleep. After a long time the sound of sobbing finally disappeared. He heard her footsteps, which were very light and timid. She seemed to look at him for a while to make sure he was really asleep. Then she walked out of the private room and came back with the waiter to send him to the car. Throughout the entire process, not to mention showing concern for him, she didn't even get close to him. When she arrived at his place, she had already called his assistant in advance. Just like when they came out of the bar, she still didn't approach him. She just ordered her assistant to send him upstairs. After he lay down on the bed, she handed a cup of soup to the assistant and said that she still had things to do. She asked the assistant to take care of him and left in a hurry. He didn't open his eyes until the sound of the door closing came from the living room. When the assistant saw him, he immediately held up the hangover soup and said, "Boss Lu, this is the soup that Sister Ling just cooked for you. Have some." Lu Benlei glanced at the bowl of hangover soup in his assistant's hands, but he didn't take it. Instead he glanced at the clock on the wall and saw that it was already 1 in the morning. Thus he turned to his assistant and said, "It's getting late, you should head back to rest. But Sister Ling said that I should stay here to take care of myself." Before the assistant could finish his words, Lu Benlei had already interjected, "I'm fine. Just leave when she asks you to." Chapter 946. Before the assistant could finish his words, Lu Benlei had already interjected, "I'm fine. Just leave when I say so." After saying those words, Lu Benlei got off the bed and walked into the bathroom. By the time he took a shower and washed away the smell of alcohol on his body, the assistant was no longer there. He was the only one left in the huge apartment. It was already late, but he didn't feel sleepy at all. He stared at the bowl of hangover soup that his assistant had placed by his bedside for a while before putting on a coat and heading to the balcony. It was already deep into the night and the entire neighborhood was eerily quiet. The sky was so dark that not a single star could be seen. Lu Benlei silently stared at the endless horizon for a long time before he finally retracted his gaze. He took out his phone and lowered his head. Unlocking the screen, he tapped into his phone's browser, and the first thing he saw was the official website of an internationally renowned jewelry brand. This was the page that he hadn't logged out of when he was done searching for rings in the afternoon. Every single ring in the page was expensive, and their designs were beautiful as well. He stared at the page for a long time, hesitating over which ring to give to her. But if he were to really buy it and give it to her, would she be willing to accept it? 2.5 years ago she made a bet with him. If it snowed on Christmas she would consider him. But it was a pity that the heavens weren't on their side that day. He created a fake snow in exchange for her consideration. A year and a half ago on Christmas Day he made another bet with her. It was on the roadside of Chang'an Street. He looked at the cars that sped past in the middle of the night and told her that within half an hour, if the number of the cars was an even number, she would grant him one wish. If it was an odd number he would grant her one wish. She agreed and he won the bet. In truth she was the one who won, but he had made preparations in advance. He had his assistant wait near Chang'an Street, and at the last moment he managed to change the situation. The wish he raised was very simple. It was a wish that he had been looking forward to ever since the first time he saw her in G University, to be his girlfriend. He could tell that she was conflicted and hesitant that day, but in the end she still said, "I'll accept my loss." Just like that, the two of them became the most unlikely couple in the world. Over the past year and a half, even though they often saw each other and went on a date every weekend, they were like the most ordinary boyfriend and girlfriend. There was no interaction between them at all. Yes, even the most basic holding hands, hugging and kissing were not done. At first he thought that she might have warmed up slowly. He didn't think too much about it because he really liked her and it wasn't because of these intimate things. Chapter 947. After his bath, Lin Jierge climbed onto the bed very lightly. After his bath, Lin Jierge climbed onto the bed very lightly. It wasn't as if he had never returned late when he was busy, and he had seen her sleeping like this many times. But at that time he would still naturally embrace her in his embrace. But today he instinctively wanted to hug her. Thinking about how she was pregnant, he was afraid that he might accidentally press down on her stomach. Even though he knew that he was making a big deal out of nothing, he still couldn't help but feel a little worried, so he eventually retracted his arms. Perhaps it was due to the alcohol he had drunk earlier, but he soon felt drowsy. Just as he was about to doze off, he heard Shi Yao's voice beside him. At first he thought that he was hallucinating or dreaming, so he didn't pay too much attention to it. But a moment later, Shi Yao spoke up once more. He subconsciously woke up and he turned around to look at Shi Yao. He thought that she had woken up, but to his surprise she was still in a deep sleep. Yet the corners of her lips were still moving non-stop. Her voice was very soft, so he couldn't hear her clearly. Thus he moved closer to her, and it was only then that he heard what she was muttering. "Daddy? Mommy? Mommy? Daddy?" Was he dreaming? Was she dreaming of her parents? For the past 2 years her parents hadn't contacted her at all, and she hadn't contacted her parents either. She seemed to be very happy every day, but wasn't she really that happy? In the depths of her heart she still cared about her parents. Lin Jierge felt as if he had been stabbed in the chest by something, and a sharp pain suddenly jolted through his body. Indeed he had been careless. He thought that as long as her parents stopped pestering her, she would be able to obtain something from Lin Jierge for them once and for all. But in the midst of all this he had forgotten one thing. Soft Bun also needed kinship. She must have been afraid that he would worry, so she didn't show it in front of him. If he hadn't coincidentally heard her talking in her sleep tonight, would she have had to bear this sorrow and desire silently for the rest of her life? Perhaps it was because she had found out that she was pregnant, but the next day, Shi Yao woke up earlier than usual. Lin Jierge wasn't fully awake yet, so she didn't want to disturb him. Instead she quietly got off the bed and went to wash up. Grandpa Lin, who had always doted on her, knew that she was pregnant, so it went without saying that he would cherish her more than anyone else. Thus, when Shi Yao walked out of her bedroom to drink some water, she saw that Auntie Sun and the chefs of the Lin family old mansion were already busy in the kitchen. With Auntie Sun around, there was no need for her to do anything. While she was waiting for breakfast, she couldn't help but recall the dream she had last night. She didn't know if it was because she was suddenly pregnant, but she actually dreamed of her father and mother last night. For the past 2 years she had been asking Gu Nanqiang about her parents' situation. When she found out that her mother's health was not good, she secretly gave Gu Nanqiang money and asked him to bring it back so that Gu Nanqiang could subsidize their expenses. Chapter 948. Shi Yao didn't immerse herself in her dream for too long before Auntie Sun called her over for breakfast. Lin Jiage was already awake and he was currently washing up. After breakfast, Lin Jiage sent her to school with the same cautious look on his face. Before getting out of the car, Lin Jiage nagged at Shuyao with all sorts of things, but Shuyao was getting annoyed by his nagging. Just as he was about to go on, she suddenly leaned forward and kissed him on the lips. Lin Jiage immediately fell silent. It was only then that Shuyao's lips parted from his. She reached out to pinch his cheeks and said, "I'm going to work now. What about you? You should go to work too. Be a good boy." After saying those words, Shuyao grabbed her bag, leaving the stunned Lin Jiage behind as she got out of the car and entered the school grounds. By the time she reached her office, she received a WeChat message from Lin Jiage. "Yao Yao, do you dislike me? Long? Page stinking of blood, timid of machinery, longing for bamboo to pluck gung badger model? Huai doesn't care about the turtle? Yi Huai lowly position Zheng? Pinching?" Seeing this message, Shuyao couldn't help but chuckle. Her eyes shone with a warm and blissful light. However, the words that she replied to Lin Jiage with her fingertips weren't as beautiful as before. "Nervous? You must have used the wrong word, right? I think you're just being paranoid." "Yes, it's paranoid. Paranoid. Paranoid." An aggrieved emoticon followed. "Paranoid. Paranoid." Shuyao typed thrice consecutively as if she was going to repeat something important thrice. "Alright, you're crazy." A crying emoticon followed. Shuyao imagined a cartoonish version of Lin Jiage sitting on the floor bawling his eyes out, and she couldn't help but burst into laughter. However, before she could reply to Lin Jiage's message, the bell for class rang. Putting down her phone, she grabbed her textbooks and headed to the classroom. It was only when Shuyao left for lunch that she finally had the time to look at her phone. After she left, Lin Jiage had sent her many paranoid messages. In the end, perhaps due to her ignoring him, his messages turned into, "I was wrong." Watching as Lin Jiage muttered to himself for the entire morning, Shuyao couldn't help but chuckle. She picked up her phone and was just about to give Lin Jiage a call when she saw a familiar figure standing across the road at the entrance of the academy. She felt as if her acupoints had been poked and she subconsciously stiffened on the spot. She stared at the figure for a long time. Before she could recover, the figure seemed to sense that someone was looking at him and turned to look at her. On the other side of the road, Shuyao and the silhouette stared at one another quietly. Some time later, a student walked past Shuyao and called out, "Teacher Shi." Recovering from her daze, Shuyao smiled at the student before turning her gaze back to the figure on the other side of the road. This time, they didn't look at one another for too long before Shuyao began walking toward the opposite side of the road. The silhouette didn't leave. As Shuyao got closer and closer, she could clearly feel his lips moving as if he was trying to speak to her. For some reason, Shuyao couldn't help but feel a little nervous as well. When she was less than 2 meters away from the silhouette, she could clearly feel her fingertips trembling. Stopping in front of that figure, she opened her mouth, then opened it again and again. Finally, she forced herself to speak. Chapter 949. Mom. Perhaps it was due to pregnancy, but Shuyao's emotional reaction was slightly stronger than that of ordinary people. When Shuyao called out those words, her eyes reddened and she nearly burst into tears. Mother Shi seemed to be at a loss as to what to do. Her eyes darted around frantically. There were several times when she wanted to look at Shuyao, but she didn't dare to meet her eyes. Perhaps it was due to the fact that she had opened her mouth, but Shuyao found it much easier to speak. "Mom, why are you here?" Mother Shi stuttered for a moment before she finally managed to squeeze out a complete sentence. "I came here to look for a job, but I didn't think that I'd meet you here." As she spoke, Mother Shi glanced at the school behind Shuyao and asked, "Yao, are you working here now?" Shuyao nodded and replied with a num. Then she asked, "Mom, have you had lunch yet? If not, why don't we eat together?" Sure. Mother Shi nodded repeatedly. Shuyao remembered what her mother liked to eat. She had wanted to eat something light, but in the end she still brought her mother to a nearby Sichuan restaurant for boiled fish. It had been 2 years since they last met, so it was inevitable that the two of them would feel a little awkward. Fortunately, they managed to enjoy the meal peacefully. When it was time to settle the bill, Shuyao couldn't help but ask Mother Shi, "Mom, my dad he?" Before Shuyao could finish her words, Mother Sure had already interjected, "Your dad is getting on in years and his health hasn't been too good for the past 2 years. However, it's nothing serious," Sure Yao replied with an "oh," not knowing how she should continue the conversation. However, Mother Sure soon spoke up once more, "Yao Yao, do you blame your dad and me? Yao, your dad and I have indeed let you down for what happened back then. We also—" Mother Sure seemed to want to say something, but just as the words were about to leave her mouth, she swallowed them back down. "I forget it. It's all in the past, so let's not talk about it anymore. No matter what, your dad and I are the ones at fault. Yao Yao, if I have the time in the future, can I still come here to visit you?" Over the past 2 years, Sure Yao had dreamed of her mother or father coming to look for her, telling her that they wouldn't be like that anymore. She had always thought that this scene would only exist in her dreams forever, but who could have thought that it would actually come true today? In the end, Sure Yao still couldn't hold back her tears anymore, and tears began streaming down her cheeks. Seeing her cry, Mama Sure's eyes reddened as well. "Mom, don't cry." Sure Yao reached out to wipe away her mother's tears. Mama Sure raised her hand and wiped her face. Don't cry," she said that she wouldn't cry, but the tears in the corners of Mother Sure's eyes increased. She didn't even have time to wipe them away, and in the end she burst into laughter. Seeing that her mother was smiling, Sure Yao chuckled as well. Sure Yao had lessons in the afternoon, so she didn't chat with her mother for too long before they parted ways. After returning to school, Sure Yao gave Lin Jierge a call before class started. Lin Jierge was currently at work, typing on his keyboard while chatting with her. Most of the time Sure Yao was the one doing the talking. She said that she had coincidentally met her mother, and she said that her mother had reconciled with her. Even through the phone, Lin Jierge could feel that Sure Yao was so happy that she wanted to spin in circles on the spot. She was happy and he was happy too. Chapter 950. I don't have any other requests. I just hope that you won't reveal any flaws before her. Lin Jierge hung up the call without saying anything else. Instead of continuing with his work, he stared at the words Sure Yao's mother on his phone for a moment before putting down his phone and returning his attention back to his work. His fingers swiftly tapped on the keyboard, and the smooth tapping sound was exceptionally loud in the office. But not too long later, Lin Jierge's fingers suddenly stopped. Soft Bun said that she happened to meet her mother at the entrance of her school, and she said that it was fate. How could there be so many coincidences and fates in the world? Sometimes, coincidences and fates were simply arranged by someone with ulterior motives. It was just like how a person's life was filled with unsatisfactory outcomes, and nothing could ever be perfect. However, he was willing to weave a perfect ending for her. On the day that Sure Yao learned of her pregnancy, Lin Jierge's first reaction was to tell his grandfather to hurry up with the wedding. He thought that it would take at least the summer break for the wedding to be held, but who could have thought that Grandpa Lin would be so efficient that it left Lin Jierge astonished. From the hotel to the wedding gown to the wedding dress, to the miscellaneous figurines and wedding candies, in just a few days, Grandpa Lin had already given them several wedding plans. When Lin Jierge received those plans, he couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. For some reason he felt as if he had fallen into some kind of trap. Grandpa Lin chose an auspicious date, and it wasn't out of superstition but purely for the sake of good fortune. Thus, the closest auspicious date was in June, so Sure Yao and Lin Jierge's wedding could only be held on the 21st of June. While Sure Yao didn't have to do much in the preparations for the wedding, she would still discuss everything with her. In Grandpa Lin's words, the bride was Yao Yao, so everything had to be done according to her preferences. As such, Auntie Sun consulted Sure Yao on everything from the decorations of the wedding venue to the design of the invitation cards before making a decision. However, there were two matters that required Sure Yao's personal attention. The first was to try on the wedding gown. Due to Sure Yao's pregnancy, Grandpa Lin had already regarded her as a precious person, but now she was even more precious than before. Thus, the gown had to be personally delivered to her house and tried on under Auntie Sun's care. The other matter was the wedding ring. One weekend, Lin Jierge accompanied Sure Yao to the jewelry store to try it on. Lin Jia's appointment was made in the morning, and coincidentally, the afternoon was Sure Yao's prenatal checkup. As there were two things that they had to do in a day, Lin Jierge and Sure Yao intentionally left the house a little earlier that day. Chapter 951. Lin Jiege was waiting for Shi Yao's opinion on the new pair of rings, but after a long while seeing no reaction from her he couldn't help but glance at her before following her line of sight to the entrance of the store. After taking a quick glance at Qin Yiran, Lin Jiege lowered his head and asked Shi Yao, "Do you know the person who just came in?" Shi Yao was rendered speechless for a moment before replying, "Don't tell me that you don't know her, should I?" Lin Jiege asked nonchalantly. Shi Yao was rendered speechless once more. It was extremely quiet in the store. Even though their conversation wasn't loud, Qin Yiran still heard it. Shi Yao could clearly see Qin Yiran's expression turning a little awful. While Shi Yao did hate Qin Yiran to the core when they were still in university, it was already 2 years ago and Shi Yao didn't want to dwell on the past. So, after Qin Yiran was a distance away from Lin Jiege and her, she quietly asked Lin Jiege, "Do you really not remember her, or are you doing it on purpose?" "I really don't remember." Lin Jiege paused for a moment before asking, "She's from G University?" Seemed like Lin Jiege had really forgotten about her. Shi Yao replied curtly, "That's right, she's from G University. The girl you courted back then was the campus belle." Hearing those words, Lin Jiege suddenly recalled something. "How should I put it? She looks a little familiar. So, she's that campus belle who likes to use her Smurf account to scold others on the forum. However, her appearance seems a little different from before. Her facial features look more exquisite, but at the same time, they also seem a little unnatural. She must have gone through a lot of surgery, right?" However, Lin Jiege didn't think that Qin Yiran had much to do with him, so he focused on accompanying Shi Yao to pick out the rings. After choosing a pair of rings before settling the bill, Lin Jiege recalled that Shi Yao had taken a few extra glances at a set of accessories and a pink diamond during the selection process, so he had the salesperson take them out and help Shi Yao put them on. After that, Lin Jiege tossed a card over and calmly gestured for the salesperson to bring out the items that Shi Yao had tried on before paying the bill together with the other items. After paying the bill, Lin Jiege and Shi Yao were led to the lounge to wait for the salesperson to pack the accessories that they had picked out. Qin Yiran hadn't left the shop yet. From time to time she would choose a ring and try it on. After asking about the price, she would return the ring. It didn't take long before the two of them were escorted out of the store with the items they had bought. While they were leaving, Qin Yiran chose an inexpensive but beautiful ring, snapped a photo of it and sent it to her current boyfriend. "I want to buy this ring." After waiting for a long time there was no response. When she called, the other party's phone was already turned off. Seeing that Qin Yiran wasn't paying the bill or taking off her diamond ring, the salesperson politely asked, "Miss, what do you think of this ring?" Unwilling to give up, Qin Yiran dialed another number, but it was still switched off. Only then did she remove the phone from her ear and return the ring to Zhang Xian. "I don't really like it. Let me take a look at it again." After which, Qin Yiran pretended to stroll around the shop for a while before leaving. Chapter 952. To Shi Yao, the things that she had dreamed of her entire life could be easily obtained by her. But what about her? After graduation, the income from the job she found wasn't enough to make ends meet. Eventually she started playing around with various boyfriends and eventually she got pregnant. She didn't even know who the father of the child was, but she was certain that it wasn't her current boyfriend's. Yet she had no choice but to forcefully pass the child to her current boyfriend. There was no other reason other than that he was the richest man in the world. Of course he wasn't willing to spend money on her either. Otherwise he wouldn't have called her darling when he saw the photo of the diamond ring she had taken for him, and her phone wouldn't have been able to reach him no matter how hard she tried. In truth, she wasn't intending to enter this jewelry store today. It was a world-renowned brand and every single item here cost at least 6 digits. It wasn't something that someone like her could afford, but when she saw him through the window, it had been a long time since they last met, but he still made her heart flutter. Over the years she had changed boyfriends after boyfriends, and she had long forgotten the feeling of her heart beating. Yet Lin Jiege was able to bring her the same feeling she had many years ago in G University. When she walked past him in his military uniform, she caught a whiff of his pleasant scent and turned her head around. From then on, her eyes were filled with a myriad of emotions. Compared to the him in G University, the current him was less youthful, but he had a more mature, homey vibe about him. She thought that she had tried her best to make herself more beautiful over the past few years, and she had even done her hair and makeup today. Perhaps he might be interested in her. So when she stepped into the jewelry store, what she got in return was a "should I know him?" from him. After lunch, under Lin Jie's careful care, Shi Yao arrived at the hospital. After a long checkup, Lin Jie noticed that there were quite a few men who were carefully walking along the corridors with one hand on the waist of a pregnant woman and the other on the arm of a pregnant woman. So he imitated them and helped Shi Yao up. As a result, in the doctor's office, Shi Yao, who had been bombarded with questions like, "How is the child? How is she? How is her blood pressure? How should I take care of her?" finally pushed him away. However, Lin Jie didn't get angry at all. After regaining his footing like a little puppy, he leaned forward and said, "Yao Yao, I'm just practicing in advance. One day your stomach will." Shi Yao didn't even need to think to know that Lin Jie was going to spew out a long string of fallacious arguments. She subconsciously spoke up to shut Lin Jie up, but before she could say anything, the shrill scream of a woman suddenly sounded from the front. I don't want to, I just don't want to." The voice sounded a little familiar, but Shi Yao couldn't recall who it was. It wasn't that she and Lin Jie were having a good time, but as they were leaving the hospital, they had to pass by the source of the sound. In truth, there were already quite a few people gathered around the area, but as Shi Yao and Lin Jie walked closer, they were still able to get a clear view of the scene. A middle-aged man angrily dragged a woman towards the obstetrics and gynecology department. "You have to have it even if you don't want it. You're taking my money to feed the bastard in your stomach. Dream on. I'm telling you, you have to abort this child for me. Otherwise I'll lose face." Chapter 953. Shi Yao recognized the man. He was the father of her student Zhang Xiao. As for the woman, Shi Yao also recognized her. She was Qin Yiran, whom she had met at the jewelry store earlier that morning. "If you don't abort the child and I break up with you just like that, everyone will say that I'm cold-blooded and irresponsible. But if you want me to become a father, you'll have to get pregnant with my child first. Do you think that I'll fall for your lies just because you're trying to fool me? Let me tell you this. I've been investigating you in secret. If you don't want others to find out about it, don't do it. In any case, you have to abort this child even if you don't want to, because it's my humiliation. How much money have you wasted on me ever since I got pregnant?" The more the man spoke, the more furious he became. In fact, he even mercilessly slapped Qin Yiran across the face. Qin Yiran burst into tears, and as she cried, she stubbornly said, "This child is yours. I don't want to abort it." The man's face reddened at her words, and he quickly made a move. The two of them got into a scuffle, and the scene was incredibly awkward. Being in a hospital, there were many people around, and there were patients as well. It didn't take long for the two of them to be pulled apart. Perhaps the man also felt that it was too embarrassing to make such a scene in front of so many people, so he angrily pointed at Qin Yiran and said, "Just you wait." Then he walked away without looking back. Qin Yiran clutched her swollen face as she squatted on the floor and sobbed softly. After calming herself down, she quickly stood up and prepared to leave. However, as soon as she stood up, she saw Shi Yao and Lin Jie standing right in front of her. Around Shi Yao's neck was the necklace that Lin Jie had bought for her at a high price in the jewelry store. Behind her was the OB/GYN department, and Lin Jie was standing by the side with the posture of a knight. So, not only were Shi Yao and Lin Jie going to get married, they were even pregnant? In that short instant, many thoughts flashed across Qin Yiran's mind. But in that instant, Lin Jie acted as if she didn't exist at all. Switching positions, he placed himself between her and Shi Yao, wrapped his arm around Shi Yao and led her away. As soon as they stepped into the elevator, Qin Yiran turned her gaze in the direction they had left in. When she was trying to curry favor with Zhang Xiao would address her as Teacher Shi Yao. Shi Yao must have been the one who instigated Zhang Xiao to say that the child in her womb wasn't Zhang Xiao's father's. That was why Zhang Xiao would tell her father that the child in her womb wasn't her biological brother or sister. This was the reason why her father had to investigate her, only to find out that she was involved with quite a few men when she was with him. He even learned that the date of her pregnancy wasn't what she had told him at all. That's it, that must be it. With such thoughts in mind, Qin Yiran rushed in the direction that Lin Jiege and Shi Yao had left in. Shi Yao and Lin Jiege walked very slowly, so it didn't take her long to catch up to them. Perhaps there were no more parking spaces in the hospital, so they parked their car outside and walked directly to the entrance of the hospital. Qin Yiran whipped out her car keys, quickly got into her car and drove to the entrance of the hospital first. Through the car window, she stared at the entrance of the hospital for a moment before seeing Lin Jiege and Shi Yao walking out. It was hard to tell what they were talking about, but Shi Yao suddenly smiled. Her eyes were brimming with happiness. Seeing her smile, the corners of Lin Jiege's lips curled up as well. This was the first time she had seen him smile. So he could actually smile, and he looked so good when he smiled. But he only smiled at her. Looking at this sight, Qin Yiran felt her blood churning, and her chest heaved up and down violently. She didn't know what was wrong with her, and she didn't know what she was doing either. All she knew was that the sight of them together was an eyesore, so much so that it drove her insane. As she stared at them, her body began to tremble. In the end, there was only one thought left in her mind, and that was to destroy. She wanted to destroy his smile. She didn't want him to smile. With such thoughts in mind, Qin Yiran abruptly stepped on the accelerator and charged right at them. Chapter 954. On the way out of the hospital, Shi Yao asked Lin Jiege, "Do you like a boy or a girl?" "As long as it's your child, I like it." Lin Jiege didn't have any requirements for whether it was a boy or a girl. After replying to Shi Yao, he asked, "What about you? Do you like a boy or a girl?" Shi Yao tilted her head to the side and pondered for a moment before answering Lin Jiege's question seriously. "I'm the same as you. I like both boys and girls, but I hope that it's a boy because a girl is too dangerous." Lin Jiege didn't understand what Shi Yao was getting at. "Look, you're so handsome and I'm so beautiful. The child we give birth to will surely be very good-looking. A beautiful little princess like that will surely be loved by everyone. Think about it, if everyone likes her, it means that everyone will covet her. How dangerous would that be?" What Shi Yao said made sense, but he preferred girls, especially those who looked more like her. However, that was all Lin Jiege dared to say. In truth, he wanted to echo Shi Yao's sentiments, but before he could say a word, he suddenly saw a car heading straight for him and Shi Yao. The car was moving at a high speed, so he didn't have much time to think. He quickly scanned his surroundings before pushing Shi Yao into the embrace of a man who happened to be passing by them. Only by having Shi Yao bump into someone would she be able to avoid falling to the ground, and thus she wouldn't be in danger. With such thoughts in mind, Lin Jiege suddenly felt a powerful force crashing into his body. After being abruptly pushed away by Lin Jiege, Shi Yao was stunned for a moment before she finally uttered a thank you. After which, she turned around angrily and glared at the person behind her. She wanted to lash out at Lin Jiege, but she didn't think that she would witness a scene that she would never forget for the rest of her life. Lin Jiege being sent flying by a car. Shi Yao couldn't remember what happened after that. She stared blankly at Lin Jiege, who was lying on the ground, for a long while. It was only when the people in the surroundings had gathered around to look at him that she finally walked over to him. She squatted by Lin Jiege's side and stared at him blankly. She didn't know what she should do at all. In the end, it was a kind soul who rushed over to the emergency department to inform them of the matter. The car that had knocked down Lin Jiege was stopped by the hospital's security. The security guards knocked on the car door for a very long time, but no one opened the door. It was only when the police arrived that the car door finally opened. Qin Yiran's terrified screams echoed from within. "I knocked into someone. I knocked into someone. I killed someone. I killed someone. I didn't want to do that. I don't know why I did it. I don't know. I don't know anything." It didn't take long for the doctors from the hospital to arrive, and Lin Jiege was taken away. As if a puppet, Shi Yao followed Lin Jiege stiffly. Just as she was about to enter the emergency ward, another piercing scream sounded behind her. Turning around, she saw Qin Yiran clutching her stomach and squatting on the ground. Someone was pointing at her skirt and shouting, she's bleeding," following which Shi Yao's vision darkened and she fainted too. When she woke up again, she was already in a ward in the hospital. The room was very quiet and there was only one lamp that was suitable for sleeping. Chapter 955. Lin Jie and Lin Gunan were in the ward, and upon seeing Shi Yao wake up, they immediately rushed over. Yao Yao, how are you feeling? Do you feel any discomfort? Do you need a doctor to take a look? Shi Yao didn't respond to Lin Gunan and Lin Jie's words. Instead she turned to look out the window. It was already dark outside, so she abruptly tore off the blanket and got off the bed. As she did so she asked, "Where's Lin Jie?" Lin Gunan and Lin Jie didn't say a word. Shi Yao's heart skipped a beat as she asked anxiously, "Where's Lin Jie? Where's he? How is he doing?" In the end, the one who told Shi Yao about the situation was Jiang Wange. She told everyone to leave so that she could talk to Shi Yao alone. Lin Jie's first operation was a success, but one of his ribs had been fractured and it was lodged in his chest. It was relatively close to his lungs, but it had to be removed. While the operation wasn't too difficult, it was very risky. By risky, it meant that there was a high chance that Lin Jie wouldn't be able to walk off the operating table during the second operation. After hearing about Lin Jie's condition, Shi Yao felt even calmer. Instead of saying anything, she asked Jiang Wange, "May I take a look at Lin Jie now?" Jiang Wange nodded and said, "Give me a moment." Then he walked out of the ward. Not too long later, the doctor rushed over and helped Shi Yao put on a disinfectant suit and shoe covers before bringing her into Lin Jie's ward. Lin Jie was in a conscious state. When the doctor brought Shi Yao in, he was holding a pen in his hand and he was writing something on a notebook. His every movement seemed to be laborious. It was only when Shi Yao got very close that Lin Jie noticed her presence. He glanced at her, and his first reaction was to hurriedly close the notebook and hide it under his pillow before turning his gaze back to Shi Yao. He didn't say a word, but there was a glint in his eyes that didn't match his usual personality. He doted on her and treated her well, but it was rare for him to look at her with such a gaze. Before entering the ward, Shi Yao had told herself not to cry, but Lin Jie's gaze made her nose sting up. She couldn't help but blink her eyes and tears began flowing down her cheeks. Shi Yao didn't stay in the ward for too long. Lin Gubei was currently signing autographs in the doctor's ward. Shi Yao stood at the entrance for a moment before she bade farewell to Lin Jie, saying that she needed to use the washroom for a moment and left by herself. She did not go to the washroom but left the hospital. She looked left and right and saw a 24-hour pharmacy on the right side of the road. She crossed the bridge and walked over. She bought a bottle of medicine from a pharmacy, and shortly after she came out she received a call from Lin Jie. She lied and said that she was hungry, so she went out to buy some food and would be back soon. After hanging up the call, Shi Yao lowered her head to look at the medicine she had bought. Then she gripped the bottle tightly as if nothing had happened at all and returned to the hospital. Ever since she was young, Shi Yao's language grades had always been the best in her class. When she was in the first grade, she could already recite many idioms, such as beautiful scenery on a beautiful date, beautiful flowers and full-mooned, a match made in heaven, warm spring blossoms, unparalleled in the world, carefree love, and so on. However, while she could recite many idioms, there were some that she didn't really like, such as a narrow escape from death, a false alarm. She was still young back then, so she didn't know what she disliked about them. Chapter 956. Lin Jie's second surgery lasted for more than 4 hours. During those 4 hours, Shi Yao wanted the door to the operating theater to suddenly open, but at the same time she feared that it would. The only thing that kept Shi Yao afloat was the bottle of medicine that she had bought for her. She gripped the bottle tightly in her pocket, and her palms were covered in layers of sweat. Fortunately, it was just a scare and the surgery was a success. Lin Jie was still asleep. Even though it was already very late, Shi Yao still went to take a look at him before returning home to rest. The next day she wanted to visit Lin Jie early in the morning, but despite her efforts, Lin Jie was already awake by the time she arrived. In the end, Lin Jie was still a little weak, so he simply called her Yao before falling silent and extending his hand to her. When Shi Yao grabbed Lin Jie's hand, her eyes couldn't help but redden once more. A week later, Shi Yao finally allowed anyone to visit Lin Jie. He Tian and Desolate Year came in the morning, and not too long after they arrived, Liang Juxi and Zhang Yu arrived as well. Liang Juxi and Lin Jie had grown up together and they shared a close relationship. When he saw the bandages wrapped around Lin Jie's body, he couldn't help but write on the bandages with a brush, writing for the 9x9 table. Lin Jie really wanted to hammer this fellow to death, but he was unable to move at the moment, so he could only watch as Liang Jixi scribbled on the bandages. After Liang Jixi was done, he wasn't willing to give up. He insisted on giving Jiang Yu the same mark as him. Of course, Jiang Yu wasn't as daring as Liang Jixi. She only wrote a Yuk character followed by Desolate Yurt and He Tian Tian. Desolate Year was written first and He Tian Tian was written last. Both of them had written their own names, but He Tian Tian had written a heart behind her name. Her name was written side by side with Desolate Years, and at first glance, it looked like He Tian Tian Heart Lin Wei. In any case, the doctor had already said that Lin Jie would have to recuperate for at least 2 months. Liang Jixi knew that even if Lin Jie were to beat him to death, it would still be 2 months later. So he went all out and got Shi Yao to write a memento as well. Lin Jie shouted at Liang Jixi to scram. After Liang Jixi finished shaking his hips, he shook his head and said, I won't, come hit me if you can. Lin Jie was so angry that he couldn't even be bothered to look at Liang Jixi anymore. Seeing Lin Jie's reaction, Shi Yao couldn't help but chuckle softly. She took the brush from Liang Jixi's hands and walked over. Seeing that Shi Yao was actually colluding with them instead of stopping them, Lin Jie's head drooped deeply. Looking at Lin Jie's despondent look, the smile on Shi Yao's lips deepened. She found a spot on Lin Jie's left chest and unhurriedly wrote 2 words on it. Hubby. The lifeless Lin Jie a moment ago suddenly leaped up gleefully upon seeing those 2 words. Pointing to his chest, he gestured to everyone in the room to take a look and said, Do you see that? This is written by Yao Yao. Isn't our Yao Yao's handwriting beautiful? Even when the nurse came over to help Lin Jie change his dressing, he didn't forget to point to the 2 words on his chest to show off. This is written by Yao Yao. Do you know who Yao Yao is? She's my fiancé. Do you know who Yao Yao is in this room? The one who's the prettiest. Chapter 957. Lu Benlai was out on a business trip, so he and Leng Wan arrived 2 days later than He Tian Tian, Jiang Yu and the others. They arrived at noon, but due to Lin Jie's weak body, he slept for a long time every day. On the other hand, Shi Yao was prone to drowsiness due to her pregnancy, so they didn't stay for too long before leaving. This was the first time Leng Wan had seen Lu Benlai ever since he got drunk. The next day after Leng Wan woke up, she sent Lu Benlai a message asking if he had sobered up and if he was still feeling unwell. Lu Benlai replied to her message too. Even when he was out on a business trip, they still exchanged calls and messages. However, Leng Wan couldn't be sure if it was due to her psychological state, but she felt that Lu Benlai wasn't as warm toward her as before. After leaving the hospital, Leng Wan noticed that the weather was good, so she couldn't help but ask Lu Benlai, Are you still busy at the company in the afternoon? Lu Benlai shook his head. I don't have to. Lu Benlai paused for a moment before asking, What's wrong? It's nothing much. It's just that the weather has been good lately, so I'd like to take a look around the Forbidden City before summer arrives. Sure, I'll accompany you. Hearing Lu Benlai's obedient words, Leng Wan's uneasy heart suddenly calmed down. Perhaps I'm overthinking things. Perhaps he doesn't even remember what he did on the day he got drunk. There weren't many people in the Forbidden City in the afternoon. Leng Wan and Lu Benlai strolled around the palace after palace. As usual, Lu Benlai would thoughtfully buy water for Leng Wan and ask if she was tired. He would even ask if she was hungry and if she wanted to eat something. Hearing Lu Benlai's words, Leng Wan's heart slowly calmed down. Thought, I'm really overthinking things. He's not unhappy. However, she knew better than anyone that the 2 of them didn't seem like a couple. She knew that she had wronged him and she also knew that she was the one with the problem, but she was really working hard. She had been trying her best to overcome those problems. With such thoughts in mind, Leng Wan turned to look at Lu Benlai. The current him was no longer the hairless him from 2 years ago. He had an exquisite haircut, which made him look cheerful and agile, very pleasing to the eye. In the past, she had never thought that one day she would be with a man, nor did she think that she would fall in love with someone. Now, whenever she saw something that belonged to a man, she would imagine whether it would look good on him, whether it would fit him, and whether he would be happy if she bought it for him as a gift. Leng Nuan couldn't help but chuckle softly. When she retracted her gaze, her eyes suddenly caught sight of Lu Benlei's hand. After a moment of hesitation, she inched closer to Lu Benlei's side. When the distance between the two of them narrowed significantly, she reached out to hold his hand. Before she could even touch his hand, her fingertips had already begun to tremble uncontrollably. She tried to convince herself. She gathered her courage again and again, but every time she almost touched his fingertips, she would shrink back. Chapter 958. That afternoon, the atmosphere between Leng Nuan and Lu Benlai remained amicable. Before they left the Forbidden City, Lu Benlai patiently accompanied Leng Nuan as they shopped around the shops in the Forbidden City to pick out some accessories. There was no parking in the vicinity of Chang'an Street, so Lu Benlai and Leng Nuan had to walk for roughly half an hour before they reached the parking lot. It was already dinner time, so when Lu Benlai opened the car door for Leng Nuan, he asked casually, "Shall we go for Hunan cuisine?" Sure. That was Leng Nuan's favorite flavor. Back then Leng Nuan and Lu Benlai were still fine. Even when they went to the restaurant they frequented, Lu Benlai only ordered Leng Nuan's favorite dishes. Even after the waiter left, Lu Benlai still acted like a competent boyfriend, helping Leng Nuan remove the disposable chopsticks and the wet paper towels. Everything was still fine. By the time they were done with their meal, it was already around 8 in the evening. Leng Nuan was indeed a little tired after strolling around the Forbidden City for the entire afternoon. After settling the bill, Lu Benlai asked her where she wanted to go and she replied, "I want to go home." Lu Benlai replied with the "all right." When they reached the first floor of the restaurant, he had Leng Nuan wait for him for a moment before heading to the washroom. There were people entering and leaving the restaurant one after another. Leng Nuan didn't pay much attention to her surroundings. She was browsing through her unread messages on her phone, and it was only when she felt that it was about time that she raised her head to look in the direction of the washroom. Seeing that Lu Benlai hadn't come out yet, she retracted her gaze and turned back to her phone. However, just as she was about to leap past the entrance of the restaurant, she caught sight of a familiar figure. Her fingers trembled and the phone fell to the ground with a thud. It was as if she had just received a huge fright. Her mind was at a complete loss, and she panicked until Lu Benlei's voice sounded behind her. "Yuanyuan?" Noticing Leng Nuan's ghastly pale face, Lu Benlei's expression also turned grim. "What's wrong?" It was only then that Leng Nuan raised her head to look at Lu Benlai. After a moment of composure, she shook her head and said, Nothing. Then why do you look so pale? Also, why did your phone fall to the ground?" Lu Benlai asked as he bent down to pick up Leng Nuan's phone. The screen shattered. Seeing that Leng Nuan's complexion was still a little awful, Lu Benlai thought that she was feeling distressed over her phone, so he said, "It's fine, it's not too late anyway. Let's take a detour to a phone shop on the way home and pick a new one." Leng Nuan didn't understand what Lu Benlai was saying at all, so she simply nodded her head. Seeing that he was walking toward the door, she followed suit. Just as she was about to step out of the restaurant, she suddenly recalled the familiar figure who had just disappeared from the restaurant, and she halted her footsteps. Through the glass door, she stared fearfully at the figure outside for quite some time. It wasn't until Lu Benlai walked out of the restaurant that he noticed that she wasn't coming out, that he turned to look at her and asked, "Yuanyuan, why aren't you coming out?" Only then did Leng Nuan raise her feet and walk out of the dining hall. By the time she reached the entrance, she realized that the familiar figure was long gone, and she heaved a sigh of relief. In the end, instead of buying a new phone, Leng Nuan returned home. She maintained a calm demeanor as she bade farewell to Lu Benlai at the entrance of the rented apartment. A second after Lu Benlai stepped into the elevator, she closed the door and picked up her phone to check the calendar. Chapter 959. So, the person she saw at the entrance of the restaurant was just a figment of her imagination? That's right. Must be. My eyes must be playing tricks on me. Leaning against the door, Leng Nuan held onto the phone with a shattered screen in one hand and stroked her wildly beating heart with the other, consoling herself inwardly. After sending Leng Nuan home, Lu Benlai didn't rush home. Instead, he drove back to his office. In truth, he still had some matters to attend to today. He had to meet with an important client tomorrow morning, and he still hadn't finished preparing all the documents he needed. On the way to his office, Lu Benlai passed by a traffic light, and through the car window he saw a shopping mall by the roadside. The most eye-catching location on the first floor was an international jewelry store, and the advertisement board was filled with a promotional photo of a popular actress wearing a dazzling diamond jewelry. Lu Benlai stared at the glittering diamond ring on the actress's finger for a moment, and after a moment of hesitation he still turned the car around and drove to the mall's underground parking lot. He admitted that the business trip was one of the reasons, but the other reason was to calm himself down and think about the problem between him and Leng Yuan. But after leaving Beijing he couldn't help but think about Leng Yuan every single day. In fact, he even talked about her when he was drinking with his clients. He thought that he would probably fall into the hands of this woman called Leng Yuan in this lifetime, just like this afternoon, when she easily convinced him to skip work to accompany her to the Forbidden City with a few words. She was knowledgeable, and when she told him some historical stories he felt comfortable listening to them, and for some reason he liked that feeling. It was then that he realized that he probably couldn't leave her. Since he couldn't leave her, he might as well not leave her. Lu Benlai had wanted to take the postgraduate entrance examination and study abroad, but because of Leng Yuan he eventually gave up on his original plans. Just like his boss, he went out to do his own thing. With a great idea in hand, he won the investment of a large company and his business was doing very well. He bought a house and a car in Beijing, and he could even afford a huge diamond ring for her now. He had envisioned himself living his life, but for the past 2 years he had been living his life for her. He didn't want her to wander around under the pressure of life after graduation. He wanted her to have a sense of security in such a huge city. Unknowingly, she had already infiltrated so deeply into his life that he had no choice, nor did he want to choose. When Lu Benlai walked out of the shopping mall with the wrapped diamond ring in his hand, he was in an inexplicably good mood. He couldn't help but hum along to the song Young and Promising on his car's music system. If I were young and successful, I wouldn't feel inferior. Lu Benlai thought that it was fortunate that he was young and successful. Otherwise, in a society where money was needed everywhere, he might not even have the ability to maintain a relationship. Upon arriving at the company, Lu Benlai took the elevator up to his office and brewed himself a cup of coffee. He first sent a message to Leng Yuan asking if she was asleep, and after chatting for a while he switched on his laptop. By the time Lu Benlai was done with his work, it was already around 11:30 at night. He rubbed his neck, which was a little sore from working for a long time, before he stood up and left the office. Chapter 960. Leng Yuan. Hearing such a familiar name, Lu Benlai instinctively turned around to look at the source of the voice. It was a man squatting in the darkness. Upon noticing Lu Benlai's gaze, he stood up and walked out from the darkness. The clothes he was wearing were of a style from many years ago, and his bald head made him look like a prisoner who had just been released from prison. From the start to the end, Lu Benlai didn't say a word. It was only when the man walked up to him that he finally spoke with a gentle voice. "May I know who you are?" "Who I am isn't important. The reason why I stopped you is because I want to see who it is that bought a second-hand good." "Second-hand good?" Such insulting words immediately caused a frown of displeasure to appear on Lu Benlai's forehead. "Mister, please be more respectful with your words." "Respect? Is that slut Leng Yuan the only one worthy of my respect?" The man's words were getting more and more overboard. Unable to hold himself back any longer, Lu Benlai raised his fist and punched the man's mouth. The man who was punched didn't get angry, and he didn't retaliate either. Instead, he raised his hand to wipe away the blood at the corner of his lips before spitting on the ground. "There's no meaning in you beating me up, and there's no meaning even if you beat me to death. In any case, it won't change the fact that you picked up a broken shoe. I've been tailing you for quite some time this afternoon, and it seems like you treat her quite well. Did you go to the mall to buy a ring for her? That brand seems to be quite expensive. It looks like you'll be a promising young man. There are so many good ladies out there, but you chose a broken shoe? I'm telling you one more time, you'd better watch your words." As Lu Benlai spoke, he raised his fist toward the man before him once more. After receiving the punch, the man subconsciously dodged backward, avoiding Lu Benlai's kick. Is there any meaning in being so anxious? I saw that the two of you weren't intimate at all when you were strolling around the Forbidden City. Could it be that you and that slut Leng Nuan are just in a relationship and nothing has happened? But I'm still quite curious. If you had sex and knew that you weren't her first man, would you still treat her so well? Don't glare at me as if you want to kill me. It's useless. Even if you glare at me, you won't be able to change the outcome. Let me tell you, I am Leng Nuan's first man. When I slept with her, she wasn't even an adult yet. If you don't believe me, you can take a look at the scar on her inner thigh and the mole on her abdomen, right here. As the man spoke, he pointed to the right side of his lower abdomen. Do you think that just because your beloved girlfriend looks clean, she's very pure? Let me tell you, you're wrong, and it's a big mistake. She doesn't let you touch her because she doesn't care about you. Chapter 961. Leng Nuan was indeed sleepy, but not long after she closed her eyes, she began to have nightmares. She dreamed of the summer when she was 15 years old. It was already very late when she was finishing up her supplementary lessons. She waited for a very long time, but her parents didn't come to fetch her. She thought that it was likely that they were too busy with work, so she decided to return home on her own. That day she wore a beautiful dress with a red base, white polka dots and a doll's collar. Even the teacher who was tutoring her had praised the dress. It wasn't too far from her teacher's house to hers, and it only took 20 to 30 minutes of walking. However, it was in those 20 to 30 minutes that her life was completely ruined. She would always remember the scene where she was stopped by a male student while she was passing through a small alley. She knew that male student. Even though they had only met a few times, he was the nephew of her teacher. They had only met at her teacher's house and they hadn't even spoken to each other. Usually he didn't look that scary. However, the male student that night was so terrifying that she felt as if he was a demon from hell. She was terrified and she begged him in tears. She even said that she could give him all of her pocket money. She thought that he was the kind of male student who liked to threaten students for money. However, she didn't expect that no matter how much she tried, the male student wouldn't let her off. Her beautiful dress was torn and he left many bruises on her body. She was terrified. She had never been so terrified in her entire life. Even at this very moment, even though she was asleep, her body was still trembling. Furthermore, the trembling only grew more and more intense. Eventually, she started crying as she woke up from her dream. She took a look at the time and it was only 11 o'clock. However, she didn't feel sleepy anymore. She switched on all the lights in the room, hugged her blanket and curled up on the bed. Her body trembled for a long while before her emotions finally calmed down. She knew that the scenes in her dream earlier weren't just a dream. They had really happened before. It had been many years since she had dreamed of those terrifying scenes. Perhaps it was because she accidentally saw that familiar figure at the entrance of the restaurant that she had such a nightmare again. After the incident, she did not go back to school. That boy was already an adult and sentenced to prison. Because of that incident, the place where they lived was in an uproar, so her parents took her away. Her mother also quit her job after that. She no longer worked and accompanied her all day. But the environment could change, the school could change, and the people she knew could not be seen again, but what happened could never be changed. As she grew older, she became more and more afraid. Chapter 962. Why did you suddenly wake up? You didn't have a nightmare, did you? Did you really have a nightmare? Lu Benlei's tone was clearly filled with concern. I just finished work, so I bought some supper. I'll come over to see you, Leng Nuan replied. All right. After hanging up the phone, Leng Nuan fell into another whirlpool. Initially, she had never thought of telling Lu Benlei about her past, because the thought of spending the rest of her life with him had never crossed her mind. Later on, when she fell in love with him, she didn't dare to tell him anymore. She was afraid that he would abandon her. She knew that this was the result of the inferiority complex that had seeped deep into her bones over the years. It didn't take long for Lu Benlei to arrive. He brought her supper from her favorite restaurant. While they were eating, Leng Nuan looked at Lu Benlei several times. Once or twice she even called out his name, but she still didn't dare to tell him about her past. On the third time when Leng Wan called out his name, Lu Benlai asked, Wan Wan, do you have something to tell me? Meeting Lu Benlai's gaze, Leng Wan immediately grew timid. Nothing. I just wanted to say that I had a nightmare earlier and broke out in cold sweat. I'd like to take a shower first. You can continue eating. Alright. After Leng Wan entered the bathroom, Lu Benlai sat in the living room for a while longer before he suddenly stood up and walked out of Leng Wan's apartment. He opened the electricity box in the corridor and stared at the best switch inside for a moment before raising his hand to switch on the electricity in Leng Wan's apartment. Just as he had guessed, a scream soon sounded from Leng Wan's apartment. He returned to his room, closed the door and groped his way into the bedroom. Wan Wan, are you all right? Why did the electricity suddenly run out? As Leng Wan spoke, she suddenly knocked into something and a messy sound echoed in the air. Using this opportunity, Lu Benlai kicked open Leng Wan's door and turned on the flashlight on his phone before barging in. Wan Wan, are you all right? The naked Leng Wan shrank back in fear. She shook her head and said, I'm fine. Then she hurriedly walked out of the shower and grabbed a towel to wrap around herself. Her reaction was fast, but Lu Benlai had come prepared. No matter how fast she was, he could still clearly see the mole on her waist and the long scar on her inner thigh. In the blink of an eye, it was already the day of Lin Jierge's discharge, Shi Yao's graduation, and the day of Lin Jierge and Shi Yao's wedding. On the morning of his discharge, Shi Yao was the one who helped Lin Jierge pack his things. Lin Jierge, who had always been a germaphobe, was finally able to touch water. After entering the bathroom, he didn't come out for an entire hour. During this hour, Shi Yao found a notebook on the bed. The notebook looked very familiar to Shi Yao. There was a pen inside, and out of pure curiosity she flipped it open and saw a few lines of words. Shi Yao, many days ago, I wanted to say something to you. But it wasn't until many days later that I was lucky enough to say those words. Timon, you are both beautiful. Lin Jierge. On the other page of the diary there was a will. It was written very clearly that his company, real estate and all of his assets would be left to her. It was dated on the day of his surgery. Note: most of you should have guessed that Leng Wan's character was foreshadowed in the early stages. This character design originated from the news of many girls getting into trouble this year. I didn't write the character of Leng Wan so that the germaphobe would despise her or say that she wasn't worthy of Lu Benlai or anything like that. What I wanted to express was that those who had gone through such a nightmare would eventually meet someone who truly loved them, and that person would bring them out of that nightmare and allow them to start a beautiful life anew. Thus, Leng Wan and Lu Benlai are bound to be a comedy. I hope everyone can understand. Chapter 963. Shi Yao was taken aback for a moment before she slowly recalled that the first thing she'd asked about him after waking up was Jiang Wangui. After hearing everything from Jiang Wangui, she'd only said a single sentence, I would like to meet him now. Is that all right? She had said those words very calmly and she had been feeling very calm back then as well. However, there was a hint of sobbing in her voice when she asked, Can I meet him now? Jiang Wangui agreed to her request and she rushed to the intensive care unit. He was leaning against the headboard struggling to write something on a notebook. When she got closer, before she could get a clear look at the content, he had already closed the notebook and hidden it under his pillow. She was overjoyed when he woke up, and she quickly threw the matter to the back of her mind. If not for the fact that she happened to stumble upon the notebook, she would have probably forgotten about this small interlude. It could be seen that he had written those words in a hurry that day. Perhaps it was due to his injuries, but his handwriting was extremely sloppy. In fact, some of the words at the end were even distorted, reminiscent of scribbles. But as Shi Yao stared at those 2 pages, she couldn't help but feel overjoyed, and at the same time she couldn't help but tear up. She knew that these were the words he had left for her when he thought that his life had come to an end. Yao Yao? Yao Yao? Lin Jierge's voice sounded from the bathroom. Coming back to her senses, Shi Yao quickly wiped away the tears on her face and asked, What's wrong? Where's my shirt? I don't think I brought it in. Shi Yao replied with an oak before placing the diary back in its original spot. Then she found the shirt he wanted on the sofa and brought it to the bathroom door. By the time Lin Jierge came out, Shi Yao had already recovered, and there wasn't the slightest trace of injury on her face. Auntie Sun had already completed the discharge procedures, and Shi Yao had also packed up her belongings. Before leaving, Shi Yao intentionally asked, "Did you leave anything behind?" Hearing her words, Lin Jierge seemed to have thought of something, and he anxiously walked over to the bed and lifted the pillow. When he saw that the diary was still there, his expression visibly relaxed. He picked it up and stuffed it into his bag before saying, "There's nothing else. Let's go." Shi Yao replied with an before heading out of the ward with Lin Jierge. Along the way, Shi Yao asked, despite knowing the answer, "Is there anything shameful in the diary you took out earlier? Seems to be very precious." "No. It's just some trivial things from work. I'm afraid I've forgotten." "Oh, I thought the diary contained some sort of suicide note or something like that." After saying those words, Shi Yao shot a glance at the man beside her. The man looked flustered, but he quickly calmed down. As he slowly held her hand and walked to the elevator, he replied disdainfully, "Are you kidding me? Do I look like the kind of person who would write a suicide note?" The third day after Lin Jierge was discharged from the hospital was Shi Yao's graduation day. Early in the morning, Shi Yao rushed to school. As the representative of the graduating class, Shi Yao even stood on the rostrum and gave a 3-minute speech before the entire school. During her speech, many people took pictures with their phones, and there were also many people discussing below. "So that's Shi Yao. I've long heard that she's a beauty, but it turns out that it's true. It's no wonder why so many students are still pursuing her despite knowing that she has a boyfriend." Chapter 964. Bro, didn't you forget 2 words? It should be extremely shameless, haha, but it seems like there's nothing we can do about it now. I heard that Shi Yao's wedding is tomorrow. Not only so, I also heard that Shi Yao is pregnant. Someone saw her at the gynecology department, and her boyfriend accompanied her for a checkup. Are you for real? I couldn't tell that she's still so skinny. It's true. Furthermore, her boyfriend only managed to marry her because of her son's noble status. I've heard of a mother's noble status, but this is the first time I've heard of a father's noble status. Amidst the commotion, Shi Yao finally ended her speech. She bowed deeply to the teachers and students beneath the stage before walking down amidst the applause. The graduation ceremony was still going on, and it only ended around noon. After which, it was time to take a photo and exchange blessing cards with the students. It lasted all the way until 3 in the afternoon before it finally came to a stop. However, Shi Yao, Jiang Yu, Leng Nuan, and He Tiantian didn't leave just like that. Instead, they circled around Ji University once more. It was just like back when they first entered Ji University. Every day after their military training ended, the 4 of them would walk around the campus. 4 years ago, they had taken a group photo in the field, and in the photo they were dressed in their military training uniforms. 4 years later, they stood in the same spot on the field and posed in the same pose as 4 years ago. Pulling out the photo from 4 years ago, He Tiantian couldn't help but cover her face and wail in agony. "My God, was I really that black and ugly 4 years ago? No wonder people say that universities are plastic surgeries. Jiang Yu, I feel like I'm taller than 4 years ago. Tiantian used to reach my ears, but now she only reaches my shoulders. He Tiantian, Jiang Yu, will you die if you don't speak? Jiang Yu, you have to learn to accept reality. But don't worry, it doesn't matter if I roast you or not. It's fine as long as I don't roast you during these desolate years." He Tiantian, Jiang Yu. Watching the 2 of them teasing each other, Shi Yao couldn't help but burst into laughter. After laughing for a while, she realized that Leng Nuan seemed to be in low spirits. Shi Yao leaned closer to Leng Nuan and asked, "What's wrong? Are you in a bad mood?" "No." Leng Nuan's lips curled up. In order to conceal the disappointment in her heart, she continued, "I just thought of something. Why don't we all write a sentence behind this photo?" "Sure, sure." Jiang Yu ran over, took out a pen from her bag and passed it to Leng Nuan. "Nuan, you first." Leng Nuan didn't turn down his offer. She took the brush and placed the 4 photographs on top of a book. After pondering for a moment, she wrote 4 times behind the 4 photographs, "I hope that every effort we put in will be rewarded. Leng Wan. After Leng Wan was done writing, He Tian volunteered, I'll do it. Then she twirled the brush for a moment before writing, I hope that all of our deep feelings can be exchanged for tenderness. He Tian. After He Tian was done writing, she passed the brush over to Jiang Yu. Jiang Yu contemplated for a moment with a frown before writing, I hope that we can have everything we want and let go of everything we can't have, Jiang Yu. Finally, it was Shi Yao's turn. She pondered for a few seconds before writing, I hope that all of you will marry love. He Tiantum, Yao, you only hope for us, but what about you? Jiang Yu, that's right. Chapter 965. He Tian, Jiang Yu, alright, they were the ones who asked too much earlier. Around 5 o'clock the group parted ways. Lin Jiage took Shi Yao away and He Tian and Jiang Yu went to watch a movie together. They even brought along Huang Mian and Liang Zhixi. Leng Wan stood at the entrance of Ji University, and after sending them off she picked up her phone once more and gave Lu Benlai a call. Just like all the other calls she had made recently, no one picked up. Thinking about it, it had been almost a month. In this month she would call Lu Benlai almost every day, but he didn't pick up. She also sent him messages, but he didn't reply either. It seemed like this had been happening ever since they finished touring the Forbidden City. Perhaps he had already decided to cut all ties with her on that day. His performance that day was too good, so good that she thought she was overthinking things. Seeing that no one was picking up, Leng Wan lowered her phone from her ear. This was the 99th time she had called him this month. She wasn't sure if he could still remember the story she had told him. There was a couple who had a falling out, and the boy would come to the girl's apartment every night to coax her. For 99 consecutive days, the girl thought that as long as the boy came again tomorrow, she would be with him once more. On the 100th night the boy came, but when the girl ran down the stairs, the boy told her that they should end things here. Leng Wan stared at Lu Benlai's number for a very long time, but no matter how hard she tried she couldn't make the call. She knew very well that the 99th time was to persuade him to stay, and the 100th time was to give up. She didn't want to give up, even though her woman's intuition was telling her that Lu Benlai might not want her anymore. Leng Wan stood at the entrance of Ji University for a very long time before she finally walked over to the bus stop. She boarded a random bus and wandered aimlessly along the streets of Beijing. She didn't know how long she had been walking for, but she eventually got off the bus and continued walking along the street. It was only when she finally stopped that she realized that she had arrived at Lu Benlai's company. She tilted her head upward and counted floor after floor before finally stopping at the floor where Lu Benlai was. The lights were still on, so most likely no one had gotten off work yet. Leng Wan hesitated for a moment, but she still decided to step in. The receptionist recognized her, and upon seeing her she immediately stood up and greeted her with her usual smile. Miss Leng. Before Leng Wan could say anything, the receptionist continued, Are you here to look for Boss Lu? What a coincidence. Boss Lu is on a business trip and isn't in the office. After a pause, the receptionist asked again. Miss Ling, do you still want to take a look at the company? Leng Wan shook her head and with a smile asked, No. Ling Wan, Leng, and Leng, and Lu didn't Chen Yang Lu accompanied by Xing and Mo and Lu under, Lu Shi, and Lu he she, under Lu accompanied Ji Lu accompanied Lu he Lu, Dong he got he and accompanied Mo. Chapter 966. It turned out that he wasn't on a business trip. It turned out that he was the one who had instructed the receptionist to speak those fluently. She was still debating whether she should make the 100th call or not, but he had already given up on her a long time ago. In truth, she already had a premonition, didn't she? She was the one who had been lying to herself, unwilling to face it, until she saw it with her own eyes. She had thought that he was the benefactor in her life, the one who could pull her out of the quagmire. In truth, she was just a little bit away from it. As long as he didn't give up on her just a little longer, she might really be able to walk out of it. But he still let go, causing her to fall even deeper into the quagmire. Leng Wan could clearly feel her eyes burning up. She raised her head and looked at the sky. She tried her best to curl up the corners of her lips and then again, deepening the smile on her face. There were many things that she didn't know whether he could still remember. The fire at the hot spring resort, the sound of him calling out her name, the artificial snowfall at Christmas, the silhouette of him sweeping the ground with a broom, the scene of him counting the cars on Chong'an Street with her. Even though he was gambling with her that day, he didn't know that regardless of the number of cars, she still wanted to be his girlfriend. Also, even though she was afraid of men, she had been trying her best to get used to him for the past half a year. In fact, she had even thought of telling him about the past so that he could understand her better. At the same time, she wanted him to know that the girl he liked wasn't as perfect as he thought she was. That way, he would be able to make a decision on whether he wanted to be with her or not. But all of her efforts were in vain. She still ended up getting separated from him. Actually, this was a good thing, wasn't it? She no longer had to be on tenterhooks all the time. Whenever she thought of that terrifying nightmare at night, she would start to be afraid. She was afraid that he would abandon her if he knew the truth. Now it could be considered a form of relief. She no longer needed to be on tenterhooks. She no longer needed to feel infinite guilt whenever she thought of how good he was to her. She no longer needed to feel inferior when she saw how outstanding he was. She had finally returned to the past where she didn't have to talk about love, hate, anger, and infatuation. He was such a good person and she wasn't worthy of him. So this was good, really good. This was supposed to be a happy occasion, so why was she crying? What was there to cry about? Leng Nuan sat by the roadside in a daze for a very long time. It was only when the number of cars in front of her gradually decreased that she stood up and hailed a cab to head home. Sitting at the back of the car, Leng Nuan had been staring out the window the entire time. She used to think that Beijing's night view was very beautiful, but today all the scenery in front of her eyes had lost its color. Lu Benlei's place wasn't too far away from her rented apartment, but she had to pass through Beijing's bar district to get there. When the car drove past the mix, she saw a familiar figure through the window. It was Lu Benlei. He seemed to be drunk and he was standing by the roadside vomiting furiously into the trash can. His secretary and chauffeur were nowhere to be found. They were not with him. Leng Nuan subconsciously gestured for the driver to stop the car, but before she could reach Lu Benlei, the latter had already collapsed onto the street, unconscious. In the end, it was the driver who helped Leng Nuan push Lu Benlei into the car. Chapter 967. Even though Lu Benlei was so drunk, Leng Nuan was still a little afraid of him. Her entire body was trembling as she supported him into the bedroom. It was only when he was lying on the bed that her beating heart finally calmed down a little. With trembling fingers, she helped him take off his shoes before pulling the blanket over him. Subconsciously, she wanted to stand up and distance herself from him. But in his drunken state, he seemed to have sensed that someone was taking care of him. He suddenly raised his hand, accurately grabbed her wrist and pulled her down onto his body. His aura instantly filled her entire body. She didn't hate his scent, but she was afraid of coming into contact with a man like this. She subconsciously tried to struggle free. He was drunk, so he wasn't very strong. In truth, she could have easily pushed him away and left. But after struggling for a moment, she suddenly stopped. Her heart was filled with resistance, and her body was trembling uncontrollably. But she tried her best to hold it in. She didn't know how long she had been lying on his shoulder. She thought that he had fallen asleep from his drunken stupor, but all of a sudden he flipped over and pinned her beneath his body. This time not only was her body trembling, even her eyelashes were trembling. The instinctive urge to push him away and escape grew stronger and stronger in her mind. She tried her best to suppress it, but when she felt his lips on hers, her teeth began to chatter out of fear. She subconsciously raised her hand, but just as she was about to push his chest, she suddenly retracted her strength. She closed her eyes, not daring to look at him. She could feel his lips on her neck and her clothes were being stripped off. Her mind was filled with the terrifying images of that night. She bit down on her lower lip desperately to prevent herself from screaming or begging for mercy. She felt the brute force of him barging into her world, but she didn't feel any joy or happiness. Instead, she bit down even harder on her lower lip. In order to prevent herself from going berserk, she tried her best to hold on to the bedsheets. In the end she tasted blood in her mouth. It was only when she knew that she had bitten through her lips that he finally released her. Perhaps it was because he was satisfied he quickly fell asleep by the side. The moment the weight on Leng Nuan's body disappeared, she rolled onto the ground. She shivered on the cold floor for a long time before she picked up her clothes and hastily put them on. Then she ran out of his house. When she got back to her place, the first thing she did was to take a shower in the bathroom. When she came out, she didn't go back to bed. Instead, she opened the closet and began to pack her things. By the time she was done packing up, she picked up her phone to take a look at the time. It was already 3 in the morning. She tapped into her call history and stared at Liu Benlei's name for a moment before tapping on the dial button. On the 100th call he still didn't pick up, but she knew that it didn't matter whether he picked up or not. For some people, no matter how long they walked with you, they still had to say goodbye and take care in the end. After dinner, before Lin Jierge and Shi Yao left the restaurant, Shi Yao made a trip to the washroom. Carrying Shi Yao's bag, Lin Jierge stood at the entrance of the washroom, waiting for her to return. He washed his hands, and when he saw that the toilet paper in the restaurant's washroom had run out, he opened Shi Yao's bag and began rummaging through it. However, before he could find anything, he saw a medicine bottle instead. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.